And good morning. It is a Friday edition of GCR. I am Glenn Clark. Griffin is here, and if it's a Friday, that means the Chief Grand Poobah here at PressBox. Stan the Fan Charles is back in studio with us. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Glenn. Good to see you, Griffin.
Obviously, quite different feel than when we were in here last Friday. Very different feel. It's
a lot of humble pie.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
By the way, I went to Chipotle last night in Pikesville. And here comes a kid wearing a Concordia T-shirt.
Oh, does he know the legend that is? Does he know?
He was aware of
the star, the real star.
He was aware of Miles Goodman.
The real star of the show.
Yes, I started talking to him, and I didn't have my hearing aids in, which is a great admission to make. Couldn't hear a word he said, but his father was. He goes, "Are you Stan? Are you with PressBox?"
Oh, how about that?
And he said, "I saw the interview." And I don't know, I guess that was the interview. Did we do
with Coach Joe?
Yeah, did we do a Zoom? We did a Zoom.
Yes, you
with
did
him.
do a Zoom. Yeah, you and Gary did. Yeah.
So they got a game coming up Saturday.
Yeah, they do a big one against St. Mary's tomorrow. Be a rematch of the B Conference Championship. Concordia looking for revenge.
What time does that game start?
That'll be at noon on the Concordia Prep YouTube channel.
That'll be noon? At Concordia Prep.
At Concordia Prep, yes.
I might be able to make that.
Look at
Okay,
that.
all right.
Stan's got weekend
plans. How much are tickets
now.
to?
Ah, man.
But you know a
like
guy.
50
Yeah.
$50?
You know, you should be able to. I mean,
I don't think it's that much.
I'll call Steve Nichols at
call over
Sports Tickets
right,
Unlimited.
see if he
Maybe he
can
can get me
I
a
think
deal.
he's in London right now. Stan,
Is he really? Yeah, that's right. He is.
I'm pretty sure that's what they do now. Is they just take. I don't even think it's just for the Ravens. I think they take like everybody's fan base to London now.
That's great. That's great.
We got a lot to do on the program today. Coming up in a few minutes, John Smoltz will join us, the Hall of Famer. He, of course, was on the call for the Orioles Division Series.
Not the John Smoltz.
The John Smoltz is going to join us. Also, later on this hour, Bo Smolka, PressBox Ravens beat writer.
Not
the Bo Smolka. We managed to get him. It was a heck of a pull. And before the day is out, he said he wasn't really sure he wanted to talk to Stan, but Noah Eagle from NBC will join us to preview Maryland, Illinois.
The Noah
Eagle, the son of Ian Eagle, of course, who's now the lead play-by-play voice for NBC's Big Ten coverage. He'll join us a little bit later on as well. If you have not figured out your plans yet for Sunday morning, I don't know what you're waiting for. The place to be is Guilford Hall Brewery. Ravens fans, are you ready for the biggest game day party in Baltimore? Join us at Guilford Hall Brewery Sunday, October 15th for the official London Game Watch Party. Getting started early with live music, bottomless mimosas, unlimited Guilford
got
beer.
me excited there. Bottomless.
Oh, well, not that type of bottomless,
Okay.
Stan.
I didn't think that was the type of place.
They're doing a block party, so I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure there's still
Families,
decency
yeah,
laws.
yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, Dunkin' Coffee, signature cocktails. Yeah, Dunkin'-flavored signature cocktails. Games, a kid zone, definitely not bottomless. Appearances from special guests, including Ravens legend Jimmy Smith, the Ravens cheerleaders, the Marching Ravens Band, and Poe. Doors open at 8 a.m., so rally your flock. We'll see you at Guilford Hall. This event is free to the public with all-you-can-drink wristbands available for purchase. Visit guilfordhall.com for more information. Stan, you and I are going to do a bit of a deeper dive on the Orioles later on in the show.
Yeah.
Right now, I just want to talk about the fact that it is, of course, official. The three teams that had seismically better records than everybody else in baseball are all out.
And the fourth team that had the best
yes,
record.
the Rays too, but they weren't victims,
understand.
obviously,
They
of the
didn't
wild
qualify
card.
for it, yeah.
The three teams with the best records in all of baseball combined to win one playoff game.
Yep.
As officially, the Braves were eliminated last night by the Phillies, setting up a Philadelphia-Arizona NLCS, which gets underway on Monday. Of course, it'll be a Texas-Houston ALCS getting underway on Sunday. I, for the most part, avoided, although it's ironic that Smoltz is on with this, because I think that he offered a really reasonable idea, very sound for how you could tinker with this without completely blowing it up.
Right.
I have avoided it as much as I can because to me it's excuse making. It's the only reason why you lost is because you had to wait around for all those days. No, you lost because you went out and you got your butts kicked. You lost because
but baseball and basketball are sports that are played while basketball isn't every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, teams get a rhythm going. baseball is that rhythm of playing every day is part of it.
So what do you make of how much what we saw in these playoffs is because, and by the way, it's now 5 of the 8 teams that have gotten the bye in the last 2 years since this started have all lost their division series. So what do you now make of how real it is, whether baseball should change the bound a little bit, or whether they will consider making changes moving forward?
It's a very interesting question. While it's not a huge sample size, it's significant enough in the small sample size that it's got your attention, in my opinion. What is John Smoltz's
John
opinion?
Smoltz's,
because I don't really have
his suggestion was very simplistic. Don't have an off day on Friday. Start the division series on Friday. If you play a 3-game wild card series, then you got to play the next day.
Yeah.
But that you limit the time off by
and these teams are used to playing
back-to-back days. Yes,
Yeah.
it's not extraordinary to ask a team to play on Thursday and then again on Friday. Now, you'd have to figure that out if you're going to play all 4 division series. They like to stagger it and play some in the afternoon. So if you're going to do that, you have to have the team that's playing on Thursday also play in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And baseball wouldn't really like that because imagine if there's only one wild card series that goes to 3 games. There'd be some things they'd have to deal with there. But I do think it's fair and reasonable, and it's something they could work around in order to make it happen.
When baseball first expanded the playoffs, it seemed like they made an effort to stagger games, really stagger them, if I think back to it.
To have like 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock,
7 and 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Now they kind of squish
Bunch
them
all in
together.
between like 4
I think
and
they've marginalized the baseball fan that really tries to get in front of the tube for all the games.
I would compare it to, there were people, whenever you would talk about the first weekend of the NCAA tournament being the best sports weekend of the year, there would be a handful of baseball fans that would say, yeah, but for us, it's the first full weekend of the playoffs.
Right.
Because you get that same sort of vibe of round-the-clock baseball, and you just hunker down at a bar or hunker down at home. And if baseball is what you love, then that provides you the same thing. To your point, if you're starting the first game at 4 o'clock and 3 of the games are happening at the same time, you're losing out on that feeling of it being sort of like a holiday.
Yeah. That's the way it's looked to me the last couple of years, that they – like even the late game isn't like, it'd be nothing in L.A. to start a game at 10:30 on the East Coast because it's 7:30. They seem like they want to make it more like 9:30, which is 6:30 out there, which doesn't serve a great purpose to getting fans there on time.
So I the way that it was a couple of people I saw, and I wish I could attach names to it this week, when this debate was raging on Twitter, I saw a couple people say, this is nonsense. Ask any of these teams, if they were given the choice, you can either play in the wild card series or you can have the wild card series off and play in the division series.
Yeah.
Every single one of them would say, yeah, we're going to take the 5 days off and skip ahead the division series. So is the answer to go back to 1-game wild cards? Is the answer to maybe expand the division series to 7 games to make it – not that I think that these teams – I don't think the Dodgers or the Orioles were going to be fighting back to win a 7-game division series. They were beaten pretty soundly in these series. Maybe the Braves would be able to find a little bit more life if they got further into the series and got some rhythm back. I don't know. But I do think there's an argument that it's a more fair way of, if you're going to have a team have a few days off, give them more time so that if they're getting their rhythm back is problematic, they don't feel like they're out of it just by losing 2 games. I think these are all worthy conversations to have.
Worth conversations. I would hope that they wouldn't change it next year. I would give it another year at the way it is now to see if it levels out. Maybe there's some ways that teams can better prepare for it.
Have teams, you make this comparison.
What if they played what if the Braves and Orioles had played
an exhibition
game or something like that? Just something that.
Well, we laugh, but this is sort of what the Ravens are dealing with London, right? Like, they don't have – what they're openly admitting is we don't know. There isn't enough data to tell us exactly how it is that we're supposed to handle a trip to London.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to do it a different way this time and see if that might work. And it might very well be that if the Orioles win the division next year, they're in the same spot. They say, all right, we want to do things completely different this year and see if that maybe helps us out a little bit. Dealing with London, right? I don't know. Like I don't know what that is. I don't know why all of a sudden there's I'm being echoing back to myself. That's too much.
It's way too much, Glenn Clark.
Yeah, we don't need that much Glenn Clark. No one wants that.
Too much magic.
Mrs. Clark said that is entirely too much Glenn Clark. So I get that maybe you give it another year to build up the sample size and allow these teams to have conversations with each other. Call the Astros. Hey, why didn't you guys fall apart the way that everybody else did a year ago, right? Like, what did you do?
Yeah.
Did you have kind of a special sauce? Was there something you were doing?
Maybe they had the best team.
Maybe they had the best team, or maybe they had the best matchup, right? Like, maybe the Twins were the least threatening of all of the teams.
Some of it does boil down to matchup, but I'm staggered that the Diamondbacks and Texas Rangers are in the next round, the championship series.
I'm more staggered by the Diamondbacks than the Rangers. I know the Rangers were...
The Rangers really stumbled through September.
I know that part.
And, again, I always hate to bring it up, my fantasy team.
Yeah, the Evaldi
Nathan
thing, right?
Evaldi went from... I mean, it's unimaginable to me that he's won 2 games now. When he won 1 game from the All-Star break till...
It is his playoff track record, though. Like, this is... For whatever reason, in his history, he has been a different pitcher. Now, he's normally been better than what he was in September.
That means, and we had Mark McLemore on. I think it was him last week who said, think of it that September was his spring training. Okay, I think of it, and I go, boy, that's a really risky thing. It's not like they were ahead 6 or 7
they could
games
comfortably
over
afford
They could have easily fallen behind Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a risky gambit by them.
And
now they're talking about, I thought if they got Scherzer back for either this round or the World Series, that they were going to sort of morph him into a reliever, which to me would make perfect sense. They need the guy, just like the Orioles did, that's not Brian Baker,
right?
And Jake Webb coming in at 5-2 when it's still winnable.
Yep.
That blows the whole thing up out of the world. For the life of me, and I'm not critical of Brandon. I think
the Brian Baker thing will never.
All right, we'll get into
that.
My
guy.
That's right. You did say you wanted to talk about
Yeah. Well, I promise we are going to do a deep dive on the Orioles a little bit later on. I hear you. I do think, though, on paper, the Rangers story, it's more surprising they were this mid during the season than it is that they're this good at the end of the year.
They were, for a good time, they looked to be the best team in the American League.
Yes.
Early in the season, like from maybe about May 15th to about July 15th.
After the Rays' initial, assault.
Right.
After
Texas,
that point,
really, their offense looked phenomenal. Evaldi was pitching very well. Gray was pitching pretty well. They knew DeGrom wasn't coming back, but they had enough there between Dane Dunning and Heaney to think that one of them would have spiked and had a good season.
I agree. I would also add in that boy, it's a tough juxtaposition when we're reminded that like the 2 teams that are in the ALCS made really good pitching moves at the trade deadline, and the Orioles also made a pitching move at the trade deadline. Yeah. That's a tough juxtaposition to deal with. But to the point, I'm not stunned by the Rangers being there. I would agree with you. I'm stunned by the Diamondbacks being there.
Oh, yeah.
That is as stunning gets. And it's not to say they don't have a good team. They do.
What's interesting is the Dodgers. If you remember in my baseball power rankings this year, I know I shocked myself. I had the Dodgers about 18 at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a month in, 6 weeks in, I had them creep up to like 12. And then by like around late May, I said, well, I got to admit I was wrong. They're a top 10 team. And then they really went on a tear. Their pitching was just absolutely horrible going into the playoffs. They had Lance Lynn, who did not pitch well his last 4 times.
Nope.
Pitched well the first 4 or 5 times they had him. Kershaw was going to be Kershaw. Nobody in their right mind could have imagined what we saw last Friday
that was
or
an
Saturday
abomination.
night. That was just awful.
Let me give you this stat. This is from Ariel Epstein on Twitter. She's a gambling type. She works for PointsBet. She also does stuff for MLB Network. She said, "You expect me to believe the 4 NL MVP candidates, Ronald Acuna, Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, go a combined 6 for 43 with 0 home runs in the NLDS, and the week off has nothing to do with it? Get out of here. Something's got to change." Now, again, guys have had rough playoff series before. Yeah. Really good players have had rough playoff series before. But I do think that that's the type of thing that you look at and you say, it's a long – the baseball season is a very long season. To then go cold for a week and not be in that rhythm, it is hard to ignore that that's a factor. The Orioles bats went.
So what are some of the other, without going, I get the point. So what would be some of the other ways to make it fairer? You know, would it be to make those first series longer and then still not maybe give a 7-game series?
Well, I think the argument would be to go back to 1 game. I think the argument for the wild card series would be go back. I don't think that ESPN would ever be okay with giving up inventory.
They're not going to give games back.
They would have to.
They'd turn it into a 9-game series.
In order to do it, you'd essentially have to make the division series 7 games and promise ESPN some of those games in order to make up for it.
Right.
It's still a difficult. What I would say, and Griffin and I had this conversation yesterday, I do miss the theater, the drama of the 1-game wild card. I mean, it was. We could be checked out on baseball in Baltimore for 2 months leading up to the end of the season because the Orioles were that bad, and then you get to the days of those wild card games, and you were right back in.
In the old days, that used to be the way baseball was when there was a real pennant race before postseason baseball. You know, and I found the Astros, Seattle, and Texas going down to the wire.
Yeah, it was compelling.
That was pretty exciting, you know. Be interesting to see. I'll bet the crowds weren't nearly as good for those games. Well, I guess Seattle drew very well.
Yeah, I think Seattle was drawing quite well. I agree with that.
Yeah.
The argument being do 1 game, start the division series on Thursday. It's only problematic if you find yourself in a year where the 3 division winners all have really good records. Like we talked about that. Imagine you win if the Twins had won the Central with 100. Or let's go to who are the NL Central. If the Brewers had won the NL Central with that'd be a better argument.
Right.
The Brewers had won the NL Central with 100 wins. They had a 100-win team, and yet because they were the 3rd seed, they were a division winner. That their season would be boiled down to a 1-game playoff would seem unfair. It'd be easy for some people to say, "Well, you could have won 102. You could have won. You could have gotten yourself out of this equation." But it would seem somewhat unfair to have a 100-win team have their season come down to 1 game. That you played about as well as possible, and yet it all came down to 1 game. But if the only other option is to have teams waiting around for a week not playing baseball, I think it's probably reasonable to say that's on you. You could have won more games. You didn't. The regular season should matter, and we don't want it all to be built up for the playoffs.
It's interesting, at least in the American League, you had the two teams that swept the first round, right? The Minnesota Twins beat Toronto.
Yep, correct.
They were the home team, but the Rays were the home team.
That's true.
Even though they had no crowd advantage.
Yeah,
and Texas came in as the road team and swept them.
I also think it's interesting that, you point out, the Rangers and the Astros were still battling into the final weekend of the season. They had no respite.
No wiggle room.
And I remember us having this conversation last week. We were kind of ignoring the Orioles' offensive woes down the stretch, in part because it was easy to say, well, hey, they were carrying the burden of trying to win the division, and then they didn't care that weekend. Yeah. And as much as I get it, you wanted to give some guys some rest. At the same time, you kind of needed your offense to be clicking. You kind of needed guys to be feeling good about each other. And there's some hindsight to look back on and say, wow, the teams that were pushed all the way through 162 games in the American League, those are the teams that were playing the best baseball into October. Meanwhile, the Orioles, who were able to kind of shut it down for the final weekend of the season and go through the motions and have some fun, they never got it going
It's
again.
not as easy to quantify what happened with the Orioles because I think the Orioles were a tired team. In fact, I think they would have benefited from 2 or 3 days off. I mean, I don't have a quantification of that, but to me, the difference was that they had 5 days off. And
arguably they had more like 8 days off because they really did not go. They
the
just
Boston
went through the
games
motions
didn't
in the
really
Boston
matter.
games.
Yeah.
The guys played, but they were just kind of going out there.
Yeah.
Like they were treating it more like spring training over the course of the final weekend. And in hindsight, that 8-day layoff might be what really doomed them, is that they stopped kind of playing baseball in heat for a long time. And then all of a sudden, the one game they play on Saturday is critical because it's a home game that if you lose, you're in bad shape.
All right.
So I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers. I do think it's warranted conversation, and it's obviously going to continue. Today's show is also brought to you by Superbook. We've got a couple of codes for Superbook. Glenn Clark,
Stan
23.
Charles, 23.
That one works. Glenn Clark, 23 works. I think even better. It gets you this.
That's debatable.
It gets you the same offer either way. Sign up today. You get a same-day first bet up to $250, win or lose, with Superbook.com or the Superbook app. Go sign up today. It was great having our next guest on the call. Wish the results had been a little bit different, and we would be getting more of him in our lives, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. He is, of course, the Hall of Famer and Fox MLB analyst, John Smoltz, and he is back with us now this morning here on GCR. John, it's Glenn. Stan the Fan Charles is in studio with me this morning. It's great to chat with you. Thank you, as always, for taking the time for us.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
John, before we get into the Orioles, we were just having the conversation, and I gave you a lot of credit over the course of the last week. I thought your take about how you can adjust without, ripping things up and start the division series on Friday instead of on Saturday, I thought that made a lot of sense. You're not doing anything crazy. You're just making it one less day that teams are sitting around, and why should a team that has to play a 3-game wild card series earn another day off to reset their pitching for the division series?
Yeah, I totally agree. There'll be some time before they make some adjustments. They're going to let this play out, and I'm pretty confident they'll make some adjustments when needed.
Do you think that is when we talk about these three teams, the three best teams in baseball this year, the Braves, the Dodgers, the Orioles, combining to win one playoff game, is that the biggest story, or are we making too much of it because these teams just flat didn't show up in the division series?
No, I think it's a story. I think it's something you got to look at. Look, baseball's played in 2 different late years. There's the regular season and the postseason. And unlike other, you play 162 games to have the overall best depth. You show why you're the best team in the league, respective league and division. I know what they tried to do, and I give them all the credit in the world. They tried to create an advantage and reward the best records in baseball. Yep. No doubt. That's what was set up. There's 2 things you can do. One thing I just suggested, or you make it a best of 7 in that second series, and then you got time to recover for the layoff. But this has happened 2 straight years. Is that a big enough sample size to make wholesale changes? Probably not. But, the Baltimore Orioles are set up to make continual after continual runs, and this will serve as a great learning experience for a lot of their young guys, for their organization, and I don't see why they can't be right in the same spot next year.
John, Stan Charles here, big fan of yours over the years. Got to ask you before I ask you a question related to the playoffs. Do you remember which ex-Oriole you were traded for from the Tigers?
Well, Doyle Alexander played for a lot of teams. I didn't know he played for Baltimore.
He was traded for Frank Robinson. Yep, you got the right answer. All right. Hey, your suggestion is really an interesting one, to take the day off in between. Do you expect them to do something by next year, or do you think they'll go 1 or 2 more years with it and see if this could level off some way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think 1 more year would probably be sufficient. I think the more attention that is given to this will create more discussion. And look, it's pretty big gaps. It's not like the division was the team they were playing, like in the case of the Braves, 14 games better than the Philadelphia Phillies. And then you've got the Dodgers 16 or so, or maybe more than the Diamondbacks. So there has to be something to look into it. I think eventually all of this will work out once they get 32 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Then you really can have fun with the playoff system. Then you can have seeding, which should be happening.
Yeah.
The seeding should be happening. And there's a lot of complications to it, but I think they can work it out and get it done.
John, to your point, obviously, and I think Orioles fans have handled this pretty well this week because I think for the most part we understand that it's disappointing, but what you just said is true, that the Orioles are in great shape. That said, even if you assume ascension, that you assume Grayson Rodriguez takes another step forward, if Kyle Bradish is this guy, does it still feel like either depth-wise or top-end, the Orioles still need more pitching to go from good team, even division winner, to team that's ready to make the step to win a World Series?
Honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm on your air. I don't think so.
Okay.
I really think they had some limits to innings. They had some inexperience. They are in such a good spot. Could they add a piece or two? Everybody could do that. But their bullpen is so good. I mean, they're not going to have the Mountain Man next year, which really, that stinks. But the starting staff has the most depth in the American League, and if they can upgrade offensively and create some maybe a little bit more power in there. But I think the biggest thing they've got going for them is these guys are gritty, they're tough, and they know how to win. And now they're going to know how to win even more once the postseason comes around.
You may even be too young. I know Glenn is too young. But when the Orioles acquired Frank Robinson in 1966, the Orioles, some people forget, they were pretty good in 64. The Twins won easily in 65. And then the Orioles said, we need like a veteran guy that really can be an impact player. Do you see the Orioles needing a veteran guy that helps that lineup a little bit more?
Definitely think you could add that guy. There's no doubt about it. Look, building up a great farm system is great, but having constant prospects, they don't always, like, at some point you give something up to make a difference maker. Whether or not they're in that position to do that, time will tell. But there's no doubt, I don't think they have to go out and make a world of difference and spend a ton of money. They're in a good place right now to keep developing. They learned some things about some players they didn't know, having gone to the postseason. And all those things is just going to keep getting better and better and better. I promise you. I said it a year and a half ago, close to a year ago. They remind me of the 91 Braves. They really do. They've got way better pitching than we did. And we were known for our pitching, obviously. But their stuff, I'm a Wells fan. I'm a Grayson Rod. I really, Bradish. I mean, it is only going to get better. And you know what? The only problem baseball has universally is all these guys get hurt. Hopefully they don't.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can find a way to stay healthy.
John, the player that I was sort of begging the Orioles to acquire this offseason, looks like there's a chance he might be available this offseason. Did you get to see Justin Turner much this year? And that's the type of player, I'm not talking about going out and getting the $30 million guy or something like that. I don't expect the Orioles to do that. Would Turner help this team, his veteran presence, having been a winner for a large part of his career?
I think a guy like that certainly would help this team, but I wouldn't sacrifice the development of a young guy to get it. That's the balance you got to have when making those decisions.
It's tough. I mean, that's because they've got young guys just about everywhere at this point, and that's sort of the difficult thing they're faced with. John Smoltz is with us here on GCR. John, you just mentioned Tyler Wells, right? And I think the Orioles are in an interesting spot with Tyler Wells. They don't have Felix Bautista for next year, so they can either go out and try to acquire a closer, or they can turn it over to DL Hall or Tyler Wells. But to the point, Tyler Wells spent a half of the season looking like one of the best starters in baseball. So Are you inclined to say Tyler Wells should go back to the rotation next year, or could he maybe solve that problem to help you in the back end of the bullpen?
I hope he goes to the rotation. They don't look like that, man, in the rotation. This is a horse that can be and pitch up, meaning pitch above his number 4 slot or number 3 or whatever they decide. So I hope that unless you're going to make him a super utility reliever that pitches 2 and 3 innings at a pop twice a week, I'd rather see him on the starting rotation.
John, you're uniquely qualified to answer that question.
A thing or two about this.
Because you became a reliever later in your career. Tyler Wells had a major shoulder injury years ago. I think, did he have Tommy John surgery also? But the issue is this. This year, he was one of the better starters. Nobody's questions whether he has the stuff, but he got injured. In other words, he ran out of gas. He totally ran out of gas. Can he withstand the rigors of making 33 starts, or are you going to tell me that being a reliever, like a closer, is even harder?
Yeah, more taxing.
Yeah, more taxing.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about a role of a closer, there's no doubt it's more taxing. They treat them differently than, back in the day, throwing 5 games in a row happened more than you would believe, and they don't go 3 in a row now. I get it. I get what they're trying to do in theory to protect guys, but they're actually doing a disservice by letting them max effort every single time and then give them an extra day in the rotation, go into a 6-man rotation. I say that when a pitcher learns and trains for a marathon, you don't run sprints. So that's the difference. They're training for different. They're training for sprints. So unless the philosophy changes, I'd like to see him develop and get his innings and learn how to be that starter over time that you can count on. And especially the way his assets are up in the zone with today's style of hitting.
To the point, the Tommy John was in 2019, so we are quite a few years removed, and he'll be 30 next year. Yeah. So, you're in an interesting place there. John, if I could, Brandon Hyde came under the microscope a great bit, obviously, during this division series, and I think Stan and I are ultimately going to agree. The only decision that I have a lot of pushback about was going to Brian Baker in Game 2, which I just thought was insane. But what did you make of some of the decisions, the buttons he was trying to push? For the most part, it felt like someone who had done that all season long, and they had, for the most part, been correct during the season. They just didn't all work out this time. I don't know that makes them the wrong decisions.
No, I agree. The problem with the style of game he had to manage was Baker was going to pitch at some point. When you get that short of an outing and you're in a tough situation, not a must-win, but you really need to win, Baker was going to pitch that game. It's just a matter of where and when. And I think that's the problem of having 6 guys, 7 guys go in a game. It sounds good on paper when you put it together, but it only takes one guy to not be on his game. And that's unfortunate because their bullpen was so good that everybody pitched great except for a moment or two. I think you could say Webb, gave up that home run and probably wasn't as sharp coming in. But, man, you just don't expect your stud to go 2 innings. And I go back to that series, and I tell you they were 1 strike away 15 times in the first 2 games to possibly flip the narrative and win. 15 times.
Yeah.
They had opportunities to put a hitter away. That's what they're going to learn. That's what they're going to get better at. That's why it's going to be a different story the next time they're in the playoffs.
Can I quickly, based on what you said about Tyler Wells, would I assume that you would have DL Hall as being the top candidate then to be the closer next season while Batista's out?
I tell you what, they got about 3 guys that you can make that point with, so that's why they have strength in numbers. Listen, this is the new age kind of arm your pen with tremendous arms. And I think multiple closers are way more important with the way they're being used, because if you don't have the lockdown guy you can go to 3 times in a row, 4 times in a week, and he doesn't avoid the burnout, then I think you have to use multiple guys. So they're in a great spot.
John, how familiar are you with Shintaro Fujinami? And is there anything you see in him? He didn't even make the postseason roster. Yeah. It was kind of a risky gamble that Mike Elias made. He's somebody that throws even just as hard as Felix.
Listen, they got to have – this guy's unbelievable, but he has to have a computer reboot. it's a mental thing as well as a physical thing. They couldn't take the chance
Yeah.
in the postseason, and that decision was right. But if they can work with this young man and they can get him to a place of confidence and mechanics, the sky's the ceiling. It's unbelievable. But everybody, knows that a computer can get a virus. And when your mind gets some things in there, it's hard to get it out until you work through it. And I think throwing strikes is the only issue. And if that's the only issue, you can fix that. But if the other issue is the confidence of throwing strikes, well, then that's something you got to work on as well.
John, before we let you go, real quick question about Jack Flaherty. The Orioles made that deal. If you were Jack Flaherty's agent, do you want him to work through this as a starting pitcher, or do you think it's time for him to try doing what you did? And I know you did it much later in your career than him, but is he a reliever waiting to happen?
No, not at all. He's another guy that just got a first-time failure, probably ever, got to work through it. And once he does, you're going to see the Jack Flaherty of old.
I hope, I don't know. It's probably not going to be in Baltimore. Right. I don't know if that's the case. Turns out the ALCS, all in Texas, starts on Sunday night. And I know part of the story, of course, from the division series. The Rangers, I think, are much better than everybody realized they were because of their record. They are a loaded team that can hit. It should be entertaining for you and for Joe and obviously the crew working the ALCS for Fox. John Smoltz, always a pleasure. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us this morning.
My pleasure, guys. Talk to you soon.
John Smoltz with us here on GCR. Appreciate him doing that.
Has a vastly different view of the relieving thing than I do.
It's a couple of things in there that are interesting to me. And I know it's true because he's come on with us a bunch. He has been bullish about the Orioles pitching for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so while everybody else, and when we do our deeper dive, I'm sure it'll be at the top of the conversation will be how they can add pitching this offseason. I agree that there is every reason to feel good about the group of Means, Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez atop your rotation a year from now. But are you confident that any of them is
I got a great pitcher we can talk about.
All right.
I already spotted him.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
Already spotted him.
Very interesting. I am less I am not going to say I think in order to take a step towards being a World Series champion, there has to be further fortification in the rotation.
This guy that I have in mind,
oh boy,
is sort of both. Could be the fortification, and he could be, if everything's working right, he could be that guy that is the swing man.
Okay,
can give you 3 innings at a time, something like that.
Okay,
but I think going into next year between Fuji, Wells, and Hall, I would just make it a committee rather than try and get one lockdown guy. And maybe by June 1st, you've narrowed it down to that one guy, I'm
inclined, what Hall did in the postseason, based with his stuff, like he's the guy whose temperament right now seems to be
he really stepped up.
And admittedly, it's a small sample size,
Wasn't there
right?
a guy that was saying that he should be a reliever?
I've heard that for some time. And I've credited you because at first I said I didn't. It was less about me. It was more about I didn't think the Orioles would do it, right? Like because he was just so important to their. But given where they are now and given what he's done, it's even more perplexing that he wasn't here for more of the season. It's even more perplexing they went through all of this absurd theater of the absurd with him throughout the course of the year.
The craziest part of the development of D.A. Hall was when they brought him up for that start in Tampa last year, right? And they said, and it wasn't a horrible start, but he was all over the place. And they said, you know what, we're sending him back down, and he's going to be a reliever. And then like about 4 weeks later, they said, well, we're bringing him up, and he's going to pitch in relief, but he's going to be a starter next year. And it was like, what are you
I'll never understand what the thought process was. I don't know if it was.
Was I stating that correctly?
No, basically that smells about right. And it feels like it was maybe D.L. Hall was pushing back about it and saying, I am not on board with this. Yeah. And so they were left in a really difficult spot where
they looked kind of foolish, but they were adhering to what the player wanted.
Trying to find a fine line between these two things, but To me, at the moment, I would be inclined to say if you're not going to acquire a closer, if you're not going to acquire one, and I would get that based on the fact that Batista, you assume, is back the following year, I'd be in the market. Like, I'd be looking and checking around to see if there's something that makes sense. And I said this year I thought they could have used a second closer. I think the best teams in baseball have two guys that they can bring in the playoffs and say, when we need somebody to shut things down in the sixth, we can turn to that guy, the Andrew Miller type. So I'm not opposed to adding another closer and having a situation, even if it's a multi-year deal, where in 2015 you have two of those guys.
See, I think Hall is the right guy for the Andrew. The left-hander is probably always going to be more correct for the situation in the sixth inning, because you can spot him against two or three left-handed batters, where the manager's not going to want to pinch hit for Anthony Rizzo or something like that.
That's fair. All right, Stan, you had
left off Cano. I mean, Cano factors into.
He does.
I don't see him as a closer, but he factors into getting important outs in the seventh, eighth.
It's a really tough conversation with Cano. I agree that he's a part of the bullpen. Yeah. It's a very difficult thing.
He's just not as good as he was the first 6 or 8 weeks.
And I think he's just better not being in the ninth inning. I think
I agree.
His temperament is not ninth inning. Yeah. It's spot, situational. I just don't think he's the end of the game. You had a show last night, Stan.
Yep.
Tyson Rementer, course designer for the Maryland 5-Star.
It was really fascinating. We talked with Tyson Rementer, who is not the course designer. He's the course builder. The designer.
Sorry.
And I asked him that question, Glenn, before. I said, before we go on, let me ask you a question. If you're building a house, Ian Stewart is the architect and you're the builder. He goes, is that correct? And he goes, you got it 100%. So Ian Stewart designed the course. He then sends out Tyson Rementer and his team to go out and build his vision. And they have interplay, because sometimes Tyson might say, that's not going to work over here with that jump. We got to do this. So they work together very closely. Ian Stewart, by the way, it's fascinating, was a rider, has won 5-star events, and then
got into this.
And got into that. And it's sort of like, I compared it to like Jack Nicklaus designing golf courses.
That's fair. That's interesting. Very interesting. You can find that right now. Facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Click on the videos tab. Go to YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline or PressBoxOnline.com/video.
I know you have an incredibly insane schedule. Are you going to be able to try and get out this year?
I'm working on the ability. I would have to go on Thursday, but I'm working on that right now. The weekend is just impossible for me, but I'm working on trying to be able to go on Thursday this year. All right, when we come back in, Bo Smolka, PressBox Ravens beat writer, will preview London and the Titans. That's next. It's Glenn Clark Radio. Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door. Just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code GlennClark23, GLENNCLARK23. So bet with the best and use the promo code GlennClark23 this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
What's up, everyone? It's Tyus Bowser, and I've had so much fun hanging out with Rita and putting up with Glenn the last couple years that I've decided to do it again. Season 3 of the Tyus Bowser Show is happening this year, as we'll be all over town, giving you the chance to get to know me and some of my teammates. As we talk football, life in general, and just say what needs to be said. You can find out more about the show by going to PressBoxOnline.com/Bowser. If you don't live in the area, you can watch the shows live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you miss one, you can listen Friday nights at 105.7 The Fan. So we'll see you all season long for the Tyus Bowser Show, a partnership of PressBox and Great Ace Memorabilia.
The next Tyus Bowser Show is Tuesday, October 17th at Mother's North Grill in Timonium. It's brought to you by Superbook Sports and AJ Michaels, and if you or a loved one have a gambling problem, visit helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Costas Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
Visit Harford County this fall. Celebrate arts across Harford September 15th through the 30th with dance, theater, music, and visual arts. September 29th through October 1st is the largest Italian festival in Maryland, featuring entertainment, cooking demonstrations, a bocce tournament, and family fun. If you're headed to the Maryland 5-Star, stay and play in Harford County. While you're there, enjoy the scenic views atop the King and Queen seats and experience pumpkin patches, corn mazes, and fall brews along their Harford Libation Trail. For more info, head to visitharford.com. Maryland open.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
The Baltimore County Police Department is now hiring with competitive salaries, including for experienced police officers, starting salaries between over $68,000 and over $82,000 based on your prior service time, accepting up to 7 years of service times with only 6 weeks in the academy, minimum of 2 years prior experience. And police cadet starting salaries at over $32,000 must be between the ages of 18 and 20, but you can apply starting at 17 and a half. Must have a high school diploma or GED equivalent at the time of the hire, U.S. citizen at the time of the hire, and a valid driver's license. So if you have a passion for service and want a career for life, now is the time to join the Baltimore County Police Department. Call 410-887-5542 or visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
Sure, Glenn may be in his 40s now, but he looks just as good as he ever has, and he's still as sharp as he ever was. And I say both those things without even a shred of irony. Find out for yourself right now by watching the show at facebook.com/PressBoxSports or youtube.com/PressBoxOnline.
We'll bring it up with Bo here in a second, but some news this morning. It is official. The Broncos have released Frank Clark. Veteran edge rusher has hit the market after the Broncos lost to the Chiefs last night, and which was just a really painful to watch football game.
I did not watch it.
I was between the two, and I ended up focusing more on the baseball because the football game there was nothing happening. It was bad.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure Al Michaels and, and Kirk Herbstreit,
most exhilarating crew in football, most exhilarating team.
That may be one of the worst big-time teams.
I've never understood it.
Yeah.
But Frank Clark is on the market, and I would think the Ravens should be in the market for edge rushers. I don't know if Frank Clark is like the guy, but at this point,
he was just released.
Just released this morning. Let's talk a little bit more about the Ravens. Joining us now, he is our PressBox Ravens beat writer. Our friend Mr. Bo Smolka is with us. He was in Pittsburgh on Sunday. Bo, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good. Good morning to you.
I'm not suggesting that Frank Clark at this point in his career is wildly dynamic, but the Ravens are throwing just about anything at the wall right now, edge rush-wise, to try to see if it sticks. Could you see them being in the market for the services of Frank Clark?
Maybe. I mean, their edge rush situation isn't exactly settled, and Tyus Bowser still isn't back, and Odafe Owe is out, and David Ajabo's out. So, I mean, look, they already went out and got Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney since August. So the search I would think would continue, and Eric DeCosta always has kind of a running folder on players at positions, and they don't know the guys are going to be released, but I absolutely think they would cross their mind.
I would, the interesting part to me too is that I know the defense isn't the problem, right? The defense has been outstanding, but Bo, even in a day where I say I think the defense played really well, at the end of the game when one team needed an edge rusher to go make a play and the other team they got it, the other team didn't. It seems to be the one thing for the Ravens in close games they could still use is an ass kicker. So I don't think Frank Clark is necessarily that guy, but I would still think that they could find themselves in the trade market if Danielle Hunter or Brian Burns or somebody like that would prove to be available, knowing how aggressive Eric DeCosta's been at the deadline.
Well, he does love to trade. He said that himself. He loves to trade. So I think absolutely they would look to trade. He made a big swing last year to get Roquan Smith.
Yep.
I think that absolutely they would consider that. And and you're right. The defense has played well enough to win and played well enough again. But the problem was, as I wrote after the game, the Ravens left themselves in position where one play could beat them, and that's all the Steelers needed, and that's what they got. And that was the whole problem. It never should have been to that point, but that's the position they put themselves in.
He is Bo Smolka, PressBox Ravens beat writer. He's with us here on GCR. Bo, before we move forward, and I know you're not in London with the team, but before we move forward, let's spend a couple of minutes on what happened last Sunday. This one was a very difficult one for me to write a column about, because the truth is there's a trend here. There's a trend of the Ravens handling adversity poorly. And it goes back to them blowing 10-point leads a few times a year ago, and now here's another 10-point lead that they blew. And the Colts thing where they were shooting themselves in the foot late in the game, and they're shooting themselves in the foot again. But I don't know how to measure that but this really was bizarro land on Sunday, and I don't think we're going to assume that the Ravens are going to drop 8 balls and have receivers fall down every play. So how much did we actually learn about the Ravens from what was a weird loss to a team that they appeared to be legitimately better than on Sunday?
I don't know, but like I wrote after the game, I mean, they want to call it an aberration. They want to, but the fact is they've now lost 2 out of 5 games that they should have won. And is that an aberration, or is it who they are? And that's what I wrote after the game. And I don't know the answer to that. And you're right, that the losses, they felt different in a way. Because, they didn't drop 8 passes against Indianapolis and lose that game, but it was a game they should have won, and they didn't execute when they had to. So it comes down ultimately to lack of execution, and it showed up in different ways. Of course, there was also the interception Lamar Jackson threw in the end zone. It was a terrible pass. Yep. Terrible. All along, I thought it was an awful call. I thought it was an awful execution of a play. And then again, there's the fumbles, right? Lamar Jackson fumbled again, and I know the Ravens were down to effectively their third-string right tackle against a ferocious pass rush, and Ronnie Stanley got beat. And, I mean, those are good edge rushers, and you're right. They can blow up a play. But we can't get away from the fact that Lamar Jackson's fumbled in every single game this year. And I know he likes to say, well, I was in the pocket, my hand gets bumped. That's all fine, but the fumbles are fumbles, and they will cost you. So the losses have been different, but those are very winnable games, and they don't get them back. And their only hope is that they don't come back to haunt them in a way of, A, missing the playoffs, or B, they're sitting there going on the road in January instead of being at home because they threw a terrible pass in the end zone at Pittsburgh 3 months earlier or whatever it was, or dropped 8 balls. They don't get those chances again. And I don't know what we learned about this team, but we learned that we already knew, and we saw again that they are capable of losing winnable games.
So they've got a fair amount of money invested in the kicker, right? Justin
Yes.
Tucker. Yeah. No, we do.
Oh, yes, correct.
Yeah. We have a fair amount of money invested in him. Doesn't it seem like that play at the end of the first half, why are they trying to be cute, drawing them off or something? Why aren't they just accepting of the fact, hey, we'll have a 13-0 lead? Doesn't that really boil down to like a poor philosophy?
So there's some confusion about that, and here's really what happened with that. And
okay.
So your short answer is they absolutely intended to kick the field goal. There was no attempt to draw them offside. John Harbaugh said they didn't run the field goal team on right away because had they done that, they figured the Steelers would take a quick timeout and then they kick the field goal, and then the Steelers would have time to operate after the field goal.
How much time are we talking about, though? They had
it was like 20 seconds. Yeah, that to me is the flawed premise right there.
Yeah.
I don't know seeing what we had seen of the Pittsburgh offense to that point in the game, I don't understand any fear of giving them time to operate. But that was the plan. The plan was to just leave the offense on the field, and after the clock wound down, then call a timeout. Tyler Linderbaum, they must have it. They have it kind of programmed. If we see a guy jump offside, snap the ball, and then we get a free play. Well, Lamar Jackson wasn't expecting a snap. Linderbaum saw the guy on his left, appear to jump offside, so he snapped the ball. Lamar Jackson wasn't even ready for the ball. They're frankly lucky it didn't turn out to be worse than that. But in the end, that the plan was to kick the field goal. It was just poorly executed, and to me, the basics of that operation. The big flaw there was that the Ravens somehow had this fear of giving the Steelers 20 seconds, and I don't find that. I don't understand that at all.
Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Really doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
But it did. It cost them 3 points. I mean, it was a 40-yard field goal. Just take it, and you know, frankly, you're probably just as you probably have just as much chance of Kenny Pickett making another turnover, a poor play,
and you getting more points out of it,
than you do having him create something at that point.
Bo Smolka, PressBox Ravens beat writer, with us here on GCR.
You know what it's like, Bo? There, it's sort of like in boxing, where we were wanting to get into a hug with them. You know, a thing at the end of the round, a clinch, rather than just punch away a couple punches. I mean, I don't understand the fear factor.
Can we, Bo? The other thing that we've debated a little bit this week, I am convinced that what happened on the touchdown, the Marlon Humphrey play, was that they got to a point on the field where they said it's all or nothing here. It's either we have to get a sack or we have to give up the touchdown, and so we can get the ball back before they recognize that they shouldn't score a touchdown and bleed more time off of the clock and prevent us from seeing the ball again. Did you get the sense that that was what was going on as they made that call?
Honestly, no. The thing that struck me, and I have to go back. I haven't watched the game again. I remember there was a play about 3 plays before the touchdown when they swung a pass to the sideline, and Marlon Humphrey made a big hit on I think it was Robinson, caught the ball on the sideline, and Marlon Humphrey made a big hit on him. And Humphrey looked shaken up, looked like his shoulder was hurting him. And I thought Humphrey, he might have gone off the field for a play. I don't know. I remember Hamilton talking to him. Anyway, it struck me that Marlon Humphrey was not completely right after that. And so then they go line up Pickens against him, and they go deep on him. And whether his shoulder is a factor or not, I noticed that on the injury report this week, Humphrey's shoulder does not appear. So I might have misread that, but he did not look comfortable after making that tackle. And so I didn't think Humphrey was 100% on when that was all happening. That's what I was thinking. I was like, God, Humphrey looks like he was shaking up. He's still out there. And then, of course, they beat him with the play. But yeah, they gave the Ravens the ball back, and then we saw what happened, and they got the pass rush overwhelmed them, and that was that. But in the moment, I thought Humphrey was hurting, and that was a factor.
Bo, the Ravens shift to London this week as they get ready to take on the Titans on Sunday morning. I think the biggest storyline is how different this trip is than the last time they went to London. What did you make of them openly just sort of saying, look, we don't know that it's the better way of doing things. We just know it's not the same way we did things the last time, and the way we did things the last time proved to be disastrous.
I think that's exactly it. I think they said, all right, you know what? We have to do this again. We're going to do everything differently than we did last time, because last time was probably one of the top 2, 3, maybe 1 worst performances of the whole John Harbaugh era. They were completely not ready to play that day. And, of course, there was also, you might recall, that was the whole day that the kneeling on the sideline took place, and they had to deal with that blowback after they got back. But they played terribly. They played completely terribly that day. They didn't look ready to play. So they turned it completely completely on its ear, and they went to London for the entire week, and they said, we're just going to do it differently, and we'll see if it plays out. My understanding is everyone's been relaxed and loose, and they've had a good week over there. I will say Tennessee went over, I believe, last night on an overnight flight, and I heard Mike Vrabel say they've been to London before. They did it leaving on Thursday before. They like doing it that way. They say they got a lot done in Nashville before they go. So they did that. They took the opposite approach to the Ravens, but it's the same approach they took before, and they liked how they played in London last time, even though they lost at the very end. The Ravens looked at how they played in London last time and said, we are doing nothing the same as we did that time. So they've gone over there for the whole week. It sounds like everything has gone well, and let's face it, this team has to be smarting a little bit after that Pittsburgh loss anyway, so they have a lot to play for.
Do we assume that it's sort of the same status quo as far as the running back is concerned, that they're going to wait as long as they can before they have to make the Keaton Mitchell move, and probably do the same thing they did last week where they leave Melvin Gordon on the practice squad and activate Kenyon Drake again?
I mean, I don't know. The answer to the question is, yeah, I think we'll hear of a roster move tomorrow afternoon. but it could be they could activate Keaton Mitchell. He's now practiced fully for 2 weeks. He's in his 21-day window. He could come up. Bringing Melvin Gordon up would cost he's already been elevated 3 times, so he would have to be added to the 53-man roster. Of course, so would Keaton Mitchell, who technically is still on injured reserve. Or you could go to Kenyon Drake one more time to be activated, be elevated. It would be his 3rd elevation. Now, Kenyon Drake, I think, only played 1 snap last week, so he really wasn't involved. And I thought in that game, they, for a game in which the receivers clearly did not show up and showed no interest in catching the ball, I was surprised they didn't run the ball more in the second half of that game anyway. And I know they ran a few times, but to me, I'm watching Justice Hill, and I thought maybe he got a little bit in the penalty box after his fumble, but I would have liked to see them pound the ball a little more on the ground against the Steelers defense that had been run on. But in the second half, they didn't look – it wasn't like they were playing from behind, and I was surprised they didn't use the running backs more in the second half of that game, especially as well as the receivers were not catching the ball.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, I do think there'll be a third running back, whether it's Drake or whether it is Keaton Mitchell. I wouldn't rule out Keaton Mitchell being called up. Melvin Gordon could be, but again, with either Mitchell or Gordon, you're looking at making a roster move.
Yeah.
Bo, you're around the team enough to tell me this. What is Lamar Jackson's level of frustration right now?
It's so hard to read with Lamar Jackson. And, of course, they went on – we haven't got to see the players at all this week because they left for London Monday. So there was not even a Monday presser with Harbaugh, and the players are gone. After the game against Pittsburgh, he says all the right things. My guys aren't going to drop those balls. We're going to keep grinding and everything. I mean, I don't know. I remember the one game I saw him in the locker room talking for a long time to I think it was Bateman after the game. I think he's trying to hold those guys together. He's probably frustrated, but with Lamar, when you watch Lamar Jackson, when you talk to him, he never rarely does he show outward frustration. Occasionally we'll see him slam the helmet down the one time after one game, but I'm sure he's frustrated because I think he knows that he looks around and sees the players he has and sees what he thinks they can be, and they're not there yet. They're not really that close to where I think he thinks they can be. He's certainly frustrated with losing games, and I know he's frustrated with fumbling the ball because he said all along that throwing interceptions and fumbling are on him, and it's frustrating, but it's hard to read how frustrated he is, but I do know he knows that this offense could be much better than they've shown.
He is Bo Smolka, at @BSmolka on Twitter, of course, is how you follow him, and be back in action next week as the Ravens return home to get ready for a date with a very interesting Lions team in Baltimore after this one. Bo Smolka, always appreciate you, man. Thank you for taking the time for us. We'll talk to you next Friday.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Bo.
PressBox Ravens beat writer Bo Smolka with us here on GCR. When we come back in, we will go on a deeper dive into everything that came apart for the Baltimore Orioles down the stretch in the playoffs this season. That's what it's painful, but we'll deal with it, and we'll look ahead to what should come. Stan had the opportunity to be at the availability yesterday for Mike Elias, and so we'll try to
and
Brandon Hyde. We'll try to see what we learned from that and what we can take from it moving forward. Today's show is brought to you by the Baltimore County Police Department hiring event coming up, and a community event as well, on October 28th, Saturday, October 28th. Go through the entire process, written test, agility test, application process, if you're thinking about a career in the Baltimore County Police Department. If you're not, it's just a great location, a safe environment to bring your kids out, get them in their costumes, get them some candy, because it's going to be a trunk or treat event as well. Saturday, October 28th, Public Safety Building, 700 East Joppa Road in Towson. Find out more, 410-887-5542, or join BaltimoreCountyPD.com.
Come for a game, stay for everything else. Book an unforgettable fall getaway in Charm City. Enjoy only in Baltimore festivals, mouthwatering eats, and endless entertainment. Treat yourself to a staycation in the heart of downtown, or try one of the city's many charming neighborhood hotels. And don't miss out on packages for free parking, breakfast, and more. Plan your stay at baltimore.org/hotels.
Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door. Just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code GlennClark23, GLENNCLARK23. So bet with the best and use the promo code GlennClark23 this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
6 chicken tenders made from fresh, never frozen Royal Farms world-famous chicken, a family-sized order of Western fries, honey mustard dipping sauce, and a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's Royal Farms' new Tucker's Tenders Meal. It's Justin Tucker's favorite, and at only $19.99, it'll be your favorite meal, too. The new Tucker's Tenders Meal, available only at Royal Farms. Now you can kick back, relax, and eat like a champion. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The Maryland 5-Star returns to iconic Fair Hill October 19th to 22nd, marking the next chapter in Maryland's equestrian tradition. Best described as the triathlon of horse eventing, you won't want to miss this thrilling sport. Enjoy a fall festival with local fare, retail vendors, and tons of family fun. Come for the event and stay for the experience in Cecil County, home to the Chesapeake Bay waterfront with vibrant small towns and accommodations to suit every desire. It's the place to be in October. Visit Maryland5star.us for tickets.
What's up, everyone? It's Tyus Bowser, and I've had so much fun hanging out with Rita and putting up with Glenn the last couple years that I've decided to do it again. Season 3 of the Tyus Bowser Show is happening this year, as we'll be all over town, giving you the chance to get to know me and some of my teammates. As we talk football, life in general, and just say what needs to be said. You can find out more about the show by going to PressBoxOnline.com/Bowser. If you don't live in the area, you can watch the shows live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you miss one, you can listen Friday nights at 105.7 The Fan. So we'll see you all season long for the Tyus Bowser Show, a partnership of PressBox and Great Ace Memorabilia.
The next Tyus Bowser Show is Tuesday, October 17th at Mother's North Grill in Timonium. It's brought to you by Superbook Sports and AJ Michaels, and if you or a loved one have a gambling problem, visit helpmygamblingproblem.org.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? AJ Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
Make sure you tuned in every Tuesday for PressBox fantasy football analyst Joe Serpico to get you ready for your Waiver Wire Wednesday, brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel. And if you have other fantasies you want fulfilled, subscribe to Glenn and Jeremy Kahn's OnlyFans page at... Wait, are people supposed to know about that?
Back in here on GCR, Stan the Fan Charles in studio with us on a Friday edition of the program. Project Game Day returns this Sunday, and it'll be a little bit of an earlier version of Project Game Day after the London game. Be really nice. Keep saying it all week. I'm trying to cross my fingers. The game gets nice rapid pace to the game, and maybe we can finish up Project Game Day and be able to watch football the rest of the day. That would be great if it worked out that way. Myself, Rita, Femi Ion Badejo, all part of it.
Why don't we do a pregame show?
You want to do a 8 a.m.?
8
yeah.
a.m., yeah.
I think I saw that the radio station is starting pregame at 6:30 in the morning. Oh, are you working that? Are you working that, Griffin? Ah! He's got to be there at 6:30 in the morning. I say that like I'm not working at USA Lacrosse at basically the same time on Sunday. Oh, my. Yeah, Project Game Day is brought to you by AJ Michaels, helpmygamblingproblem.org, and Superbook Sports. Find out more, PressBoxOnline.com/gameday. You can watch the show, Facebook.com/PressBoxSports or YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline. I got a busy weekend ahead of me, man. I got a lot going on. Very exciting week for everybody in the sport of lacrosse, of course, as lacrosse was approved by the LA 28 Olympic Committee for placement at the 28 Olympics.
I made that happen.
That was you were behind that?
Wow.
We start a new national team. I didn't realize you had that much power. I did not know that you were that guy, Stan the Fan Charles. So very excited as everybody descends upon beautiful Sparks, Maryland this weekend for the USA Lacrosse Fall Classic. Looking forward to being out there. Stan, it's time. There's so many layers to this, and I'm going to take it one at a time. Because you alluded to Brian Baker earlier in the show, I'll start there.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion of those that are critical of Brandon Hyde and the decisions that he made. I said I would have started Gibson instead of Kramer in Game 3, but ultimately, if you were going to win the series, Kramer was going to have to pitch in Game 4. Right. So if that's what you were going to get from him, you were going to lose the series one way or the other, right? Like, that's not – I can't dwell on that too much. You were going to need Dean Kramer at some point. If he was going to stink, he was going to stink. We can all sit here and continue talking about when he pulled Kyle Bradish. Well, it got out of that inning. It did work. It was weird because Coulombe walked the guy that has never gotten a hit off a lefty, but they got out of that inning with no further damage being done. We can debate a lot of these things. Putting Frazier in for Westberg in Game 1.
That quickly, yeah.
Like, I get it. I understand why you're debating it, but neither one of them hit a lick late in the season. So why would I assume that Westberg would have suddenly started hitting in Game 1 when he didn't hit at all down the stretch this season? But the Baker thing is the one I can't get over. I can't give pass to it. Like, if there's one decision, I'm not telling you they would have won the series or they would have won the game or any of that stuff, but if there's one that just left me saying I can't justify this in any way, it's Brian Baker being put in when a game, and I think the way that I don't remember who it was that we had on this week that said it. Imagine the fact that Brian Baker and Jacob Webb have been put into spots that mattered in a series and Yennier Cano hadn't.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the bigger – the Phillies went to Craig Kimbrell when they didn't need to go to Craig Kimbrell. Somebody's got to come in and pitch to keep you in a game. I can't believe the choice was Brian Baker.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was – gobsmacked when I saw that Brian Baker
was even on the roster.
This is a guy that they essentially gave up on.
Yep.
Back in, and it'd be one thing, Glenn, if you went and said, well, how did he pitch at Norfolk? And you saw he had 19 innings of 1.15 ERA. His ERA at Norfolk was over 7 runs a game.
Yep.
How he figures to be a better choice than Fuji, or Cole Irvin, you can't convince me otherwise. Having said that he's on the roster, that game at 5-2 against the way Montgomery was pitching, to me, seemed eminently winnable.
No, they ultimately scored 8 runs in that game.
I just thought that would have been either the time for Cano, Flaherty, or most likely Kyle Gibson to me. I mean, so what were they saving Gibson for to pitch, once the game was like 7-1 on Tuesday night? I kiddingly texted a bunch of people. I said, well, I guess they really wanted to save Kramer because I still didn't know who was
the Game 3 starter,
was going to be Kramer or Gibson. I said, I guess they wanted to save one or both of them to open up the the Grapefruit League next, the middle of February next year.
It's going to be well rested, though.
Yeah, it'll be well rested for that.
Plenty of rest for that. So that's the only one. Otherwise, none of the other stuff really bothers me significantly. We could debate it, we can nitpick it, but none of the other decisions that were made by Brandon Hyde are ones that I think ultimately were, say, the reason why you lost a game or the reason why you lost the series.
Look, Brian Baker's, and I've never really talked to him. I'm sure he's a good guy. He was perfectly fine on a team that was sort of on the way to regaining some respectability. And I talked to Elias yesterday. I asked him the question, were some of your deficiencies, because he used the word, any of the deficiencies we had as a roster are on me, okay? And I said, were some of those deficiencies partly because this team so far exceeded where you expected them to be that you didn't go out and fortify yourselves a little bit better than having Brian Baker and Jake Webb. You know, those are questions he's going to have to live with.
Well,
those are decisions he's going to have to live with.
I revisited this earlier in the week, and I don't want to this is a very difficult line to walk because on the whole, I'm not critical of Mike Elias. Mike Elias built a very good foundation and a team that was ready to win.
It's okay to be critical or debate certain decisions, and I think having a roster that included those two guys going into, especially the way Webb had pitched the last 3 or 4 weeks, was really debatable to me.
It's not to me about being critical as much as it's about recognizing. When somebody asks me, "Do you think Mike Elias is a good general manager?" I think he is, but what I don't know yet if Mike Elias is capable, particularly in whatever constructs he's going to be given moving forward, of going from foundation to penthouse.
Yeah.
And the first few moves that we have to look at from when the Orioles turned the corner a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Not because everybody would point out, well, hey, the Lopez trade looks great. Right, but that wasn't for going to the penthouse. That was still kind of in the wheelhouse of what Mike Elias does. The next set of moves are, can you make the deft moves? If you're not able to spend the gobs of money, can you make the deft moves to find the difference makers at a value price to try to take a step forward? And Kyle Gibson didn't work, didn't pan out.
I think he was a big step up from Jordan Lyles.
But that's not making a step towards winning a World Series.
It's not, but he won 15 games.
But he pitched to a 4.73 ERA. Like, he won 15 games because he's got a ton of run support. Like, he
got run support, but I thought he was a fine pickup. If they wanted to bring him back, I would have no problem with it next year.
If they could bring him back without guaranteeing a spot in the rotation, like if they could bring him back and say you got to compete, then I would listen to that.
He's not going to do that.
He's right. Somewhere
he'd be pitcher. He's not an ace. He's not, but he is a really solid human being.
Oh, that part I agree wholeheartedly with.
Who really brings a lot to the table. We talk a lot of times, can such and such mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I think his presence on the team was very valuable. It won't be valuable enough alone to bring him back, but I would have no problem with them having him back.
The trade deadline is about as disastrous as it gets.
Yeah, it was
this
bad.
was the first time under the microscope of needing to make serious, because I can even give some partial to Gibson of, you're not planning on going to try to win a World Series this year, so in your mind you're just trying to get a veteran pitcher, and you can say all the things that you said about him and they can be true, and even if he wasn't particularly good, which was evidenced by the fact that he wasn't going to be one of their 3 starters, like, you can still say all those things. But now you were under the microscope a little bit about making a step forward, and you gave up real assets. Like, that's the part that's difficult.
I think
it's not an overwhelming price.
I think the Showalter kid may end up being a guy 3 years from now we're going, wait a minute, where'd they get him? Wasn't he in that? I think he was somebody. I don't expect Drew Rom to be a meaningful major league starting pitcher. And the other kid is, I've heard various things about Prieto, so I'm not that worried about giving him up.
I hear you, but they were still
the composite of acquiring Cole Irvin, a pitcher they backed off on. It was almost like after 2 starts they looked around at each other, and this is not the way I feel. I think that Elias and what did you do to get this guy?
What is this guy?
I mean, they treated him like a redheaded stepchild.
They did. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And I think he's a competent major league pitcher.
A reliever?
I think Cole Irvin can be an innings eater. Remember, he pitched 177 and 181 innings in his 2 years in the Oakland rotation. That stuff matters to your bullpen being strong and fresh,
I know that's true. I feel like you're in a different world when you're trying to win a World Series.
Yeah.
That there are fewer, the value of just eating innings, it's got to be a better quality of the eating innings than what you would get from a Kohler. It'd be very difficult for me at this point to sign up for Cole Irvin, innings eater, as being a part of your rotation moving forward.
I don't think he'll be here. Yeah.
But the Flaherty thing was, an abomination, right? Like it was about as bad of a move as you could possibly make. And as we said, it's juxtaposed against those things. That's, to me, where Mike Elias goes under the microscope now, right? Like, as much as we want to keep harping about signing – look, I want them to sign their
guys. Let me revisit Flaherty for 1 second, though. You remember because I'm always preaching about this guy could be a relief pitcher. Mm-hmm. Okay. I was saying it about 10 days before they suddenly announced, you know what? We've talked to Jack, and he's on board with doing whatever it takes to help the team, so we're going to take a look at him in the pen.
Right.
He came in that night. Am I right?
Two innings,
and gave up 1 run. It wasn't beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Then we didn't see him till the last day of the season. Why wouldn't they have experimented by having him get up and get ready to pitch mentally 3 or 4 times in that 2-week window they had? Maybe he's the guy that could have come in instead of Brian Baker and at least left with it 6-2, 7-2. Not 9-2.
Do you think it's possible that it's the same? He wasn't as on board as it was.
No, I think he was. I think he would have done anything at that point to help the team. I really do. I think it was really just odd.
I always worry that that's where, like, Jack Flaherty has the right – like, he's saying I want to do that, but then there's somebody in his ear that's saying, no, it's very important that when we hit the market this offseason, you're not a relief pitcher. You're a starting pitcher. Right. So you can say you want to do all the right things to help the team, but we're telling you it ain't going to work that way because you're going to the market as a starting pitcher, and if you work the rest of the season as a reliever, then everybody we talk to is going to say you're a reliever.
I frankly don't think he had that much leverage in the situation and would have looked like an asshole to a group of 25 other players that suddenly get wind of.
But didn't
why aren't we using him, as a relief pitcher?
Didn't he kind of look like an asshole a few times there? I mean, like he just never seemed.
Guy. Look, he's extremely. This is a guy who was on the verge. He never got to be quite as good as Matt Harvey was for 3-4 years.
Right.
He had 1 year where he was as good as anybody in baseball, and he hasn't come back from those shoulder issues. He's exceedingly frustrated. Did I like his body language? Not particularly.
He just never felt like a fit here. He never felt like it was working here.
I'm also just talking. I wasn't talking about turning him into a reliever and signing him to a 3 or 4 year contract.
Right.
I was talking about how if you couldn't sense that, hey, I didn't think Flaherty was going to be on the postseason roster.
Oh, I mean, until John Means and
and Fuji really kind of blew up a couple times, and they said, we can't have this happen in a short series.
No, I thought once he went to the bullpen, that was his path to being on the roster. But
Flaherty.
But then when they didn't use him, I didn't know what the point was exactly. Is he just there to be the guy that if you go into a 17-inning game, he's the guy that goes out there for 5 innings?
That's pretty much,
And I don't know any of these things, but the way whenever I see the awkwardness of this, it could be incompetence. It could be that not everybody is, but it seems more likely that there's more to the story. I compare it to the DL Hall thing.
Yeah.
What we would have to assume with DL Hall is that there was essentially utter incompetence throughout the organization of the way that they handled it, and I don't think that that's reasonable to believe. So for me, it seems more likely that
there was pushback.
There was pushback from the player. That DL Hall wasn't as on board with that, or his team wasn't as on board with that as you would want him to be, and so it created this uncomfortable situation where the left and the right hand didn't appear to be talking to each other. Like, what? Now you're deloading after you. What the hell is going on here? It feels like there's usually in those situations more to the story than just nobody knows what they're doing here. And that's the way it came off to me with Flaherty was just maybe
if you're correct about that, and I've heard talks about the fact that he can be difficult. He's not going to have a higher trade value than he just created for himself if they decide, you know what, we'd be best be, he upped his value a good bit. There were some people that saw him pitch in the playoffs and said, this guy's pretty good.
Okay. All right.
I'm not saying – look, Brandon Hyde talked glowingly of him yesterday and said it was too early to talk about roles for people and all that, but just
I
thrilled with how
can't
he-
fathom at this point that he can't accept that this is the role moving forward. It would be crazy to me if he this deep into it still walked out and said,
Yeah.
but I'm not doing that again
Right,
next
right,
year, right?
right,
Like, I can't imagine you are this deep into the process.
I think he liked being on those planes rather than the buses.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
just can't fathom that you're still doing that.
Yeah.
And I know, again, that his team might still be pushing back against it, but you're costing yourself money
Yeah.
and,
You know what happens if you push back for several years? You've really cost yourself money.
A lot,
'Cause
right.
You don't make the money on the reliever side,
Yep.
and you've cost yourself 3 or 4 years.
We will see. We will see how that plays out
Yeah.
moving forward. But I have to think that at some point you sit down and you say, this is the best path for me moving forward. And especially because there is an opportunity for him to be a leverage, a true difference maker, and those guys get paid.
He's like right below what an Andrew Miller
Right.
is.
Right, and Andrew Miller's made a lot of money. Pull up what Andrew Miller has made in his career, Griffin.
I'm sure Andrew Miller made $70, $80
I was thinking $80
million.
million is exactly the number that I was thinking for Andrew Miller, was $80 million. Now, maybe
A good producer would have known that.
yeah, right? Who doesn't know what Andrew Miller's career earnings are off the top of their head? Way to go, Griffin. Thanks a lot.
Let's see. Over
All
the course
right.
of his career?
Yeah.
Shouldn't there be? Oh, there we go. All right, hold on.
No,
Salaries.
this went swimmingly.
Yeah, 78 million.
78
Right
million,
on-
80
right on-
million
right on
bucks.
it.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. 80 million
Arthur
bucks.
Rhodes made like $60 million, 48 or $60 million.
You prove yourself to be a leverage, reliable, count on late inning arm. Even if you're not the closer,
right.
you're going to make a lot of money in this sport.
Yeah.
I would think that this deep into it, DL Hall has to be looking at it and saying, I get it.
I would say that Andrew Miller probably has $75 million more than DL Hall right now.
Yeah, I mean,
in
that's
his bank account.
correct. That's the math. That's how that works.
And that's
So-
78. If he could put together the kind of career, the 7 or 8 year arc, he'd probably make 94 million
Yep,
dollars.
something like that.
And hopefully you would think he realizes, he's really good friends with Gunnar and Adley, and he just likes being in this clubhouse. He's
Yeah.
just going to do what he can to, stay around these
I
guys.
think he'll.
I
I think that's how it's going to play out.
To your point, would there the danger is there a team that sees what DL Hall did and said, well, we'll let him if you're willing to part ways, we would let him come down here. You want a big bopper for the middle of your lineup?
Mm-hmm.
We are so enticed by DL Hall, and if he really likes the idea of being a starter, and the Kansas City Royals, who feel like they're turning the page a little bit, and Bobby Witt has proven to be the guy
You're
that
going to give us Bobby Witt.
Boy, I'm all in on that. I don't think it's going to be Bobby Witt. But you know what I mean? Like, is there a team that would be out there that would sort of be the turd in the punch bowl a little bit here because they start getting in DL Hall's team's ear and they say, somebody's going to say, well, that sounds like tampering. Yes, it is. That's the way that the sport works. That's, hello, good to meet you. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But you would think that at some point he would recognize there's a hell of a path forward for him and a lot of money to be
Especially
made.
with a winning team pitching 4 times a week in meaningful games. And, some of these players, they get addicted to the adrenaline.
100%, right? It seems to be intriguing to them. What would be you said your closer plan would be let them compete into the season next year?
Yeah, I would think that this team between Fuji, Cano, Wells, and Hall. I was fascinated though by listening to Smoltz.
So
say that
you would
Wells
be more inclined to keep Wells in the bullpen.
I would. I was back last spring.
Yep, I know.
said I'm not saying he doesn't have the stuff to be a good starter. I worry about durability with him. I think that's a proven open and shut case. John Smoltz, but the guy's 30 now. And John Smoltz did argue the case that it's actually harder on his body
to
being
pitch,
a relief pitcher.
Well, if you're firing back,
But
if
he
every
did say-
pitch you throw,
he did say unless he's like sort of the 2 or 3 inning guy.
Right.
In other words, that's a role. That's a role. What was the heavy set guy that we picked up in the when we traded Miguel Tejada? Oh God, he was around.
Albers.
Matt Albers.
Yes.
Yeah. Matt Albers was pretty good for a couple of years for other teams. He wasn't particularly good for the Orioles, but that kind of guy Well, that's a valuable role, and as a matter of fact, the player that I'm talking about that I've already spotted.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to give you the name.
Go ahead.
It's the Minnesota Twins right-handed pitcher Kenta Maeda. Just give me before you look him up, guys. Give me a figure, Griffin. What do you think he made this year?
I actually was just looking at it, so I think.
Okay, don't say it then. What do you think he was making this year?
It's a really good
they
question.
Acquired him
Stan.
from
Yeah.
the Dodgers.
I would assume that he was making $10 million this year.
How about if I told you the most he's ever made in a season is $3.2 million?
Is that real?
Yeah. Looked it up last night.
Okay, that's interesting.
Look at his numbers. He's got one bad game when he came back.
Yeah.
He gave up 6 runs in a game. His numbers, other than that one game, are quite interesting.
Well, okay. So, by the way, today's show brought to you by your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range.
Reminded you of that Kenta Maeda?
No, I had to get to it. It's brought. Yeah, the Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out Buy a Toyota.
A personality like me?
Yes, and it's very unique. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. I'll tell this story real quick before we get back to Kenta Maeda, because you bring that up. When I first started with you guys years ago, someone said to me, well, you're going to like Stan. He's got a quirky personality. You're going to like it. I said, you know who I just was working with for the last 6 years. Stan's manna from heaven in comparison. My God, quirky.
We had a couple moments, though.
Well, we'll always have a couple of. We'll always have a couple of
asshole.
moments. Well, everybody, it'll always work that way. But I've always liked you even before we were here.
I know.
I've always liked you, Stan. So let's go back for a second, right?
Yeah.
The bigger question to me is: should the priority be pitching depth, starting pitching depth, or highest end of starting pitching?
I still don't think this team is going to go. Now, I think they could go out and get somebody on a 1 year that would blow us away. Like, wow, we got him, and like $18 million for one season.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are primed to possibly do that. I don't see some $60 or $70, $80 million contract for a pitcher, and I don't think they have to go that route. I think in Kyle Bradish
Means
and Grayson. And a little bit Dean, I think they've got the makings there of a top end of a rotation. Especially in the case of Bradish.
Where I would be with Kramer is, I think it's okay if he's your fifth starter next year. I'm not promising him anything. If you have the opportunity to upgrade, that to me is I don't have to run it back out there with the three. There are 3 guys that have to be in your rotation a year from now. Everybody else is
Means, Grayson, and
Bradish. Correct. Everybody else is in the, and really it's only Kramer that we're talking about of that group, right? Kramer is I would have no problem if he's in your rotation next year, but if the opportunity presented itself for you to say grab a Maeda and somebody else, I'm not really interested in Lucas Giolito, but let's just say the market were to crash for Lucas Giolito. And yes, we know he stunk this year, but you're sitting there saying, yeah, but it's Lucas Giolito.
Right.
I'm not going to say no to taking a flyer on Lucas Giolito. Right. So if you were to put 2 other starting pitchers in there and that costs Kramer, I'm going to live with that. I don't have to guarantee a spot for Kramer moving forward in the rotation. I think he can be, but I just don't have to guarantee it if the opportunity is there.
Let me ask you a question. If you could get Clayton Kershaw to sign a 1-year contract in Baltimore as a free agent.
Yes, of course, yes.
With that left field wall.
But
like we just saw how that worked with Scherzer and Verlander in New York, and them signing a very short-term contract. And
what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, just because them being older and.
But it's not like they stunk.
Kershaw's going to be measured now by that one game.
Right, correct.
I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that guy stinks.
By the way, and I actually think that it's more the argument that the Mets stunk. The Mets were the problem. It wasn't that was uniquely the problem. It was that the Mets weren't good. So I would actually go the opposite way.
They're saying, I don't never.
Black cloud.
Oh my God, they really.
They're saying he's worth $37 million this year. Kershaw would be. So first of all, I guess they'll never do it.
I don't think that's happening.
No.
I don't think that's happening.
I'm saying if he wanted to
Yeah,
do 1 year
right.
at $18 million,
Yeah.
he's not getting a lot of people offering him. Look, the Rangers at a
Somebody
certain
will.
point, the Rangers are still going to be paying Scherzer next year. They're going to be paying Eovaldi next year. They're going to be paying Heaney next year. And they're going to be paying a guy named Jacob deGrom next year.
And do they care?
They're not going to sign Kershaw next year.
Yankees
No,
might.
you're probably. But I don't know I don't know what the Yankees are going to be. I really don't. I have not gotten the feel for how this offseason is going to go for the Yankees, to the point that the Mets we expect are not going to be swimming in big contract waters. That does take one team out of the equation for guys that you could just throw money at. But could you also see, if the number came down a little bit, could you then see Steve Cohen saying, "Well, if it's just 1 year and $25 million, all right, hell, let's bring him in here."
He's
at
got to
that
bring
point.
interesting people. It's New York.
Correct. So I could still see them being a more minimal.
I just don't
factor.
see him going to New York at this point in his career. I think a city, everything he's heard about Hyde, everything he's seen with this team, they play great defense, which the Dodgers don't. Day in and day out, don't play great defense.
That's fair. That's fair.
In my opinion.
But you're inclined for it to be Wells. I am still torn about. I have to admit, I'm still torn about Wells' role moving forward, because
I'm sure they're going to have internal discussions about that, and it is interesting to hear somebody who I respect as much as Smoltz say, "Now you got to make him."
And it's easy for us to forget just how good he was for the first half of the season. Like, it was nuts how good he was. So what do you do with that? Is that Bradish was good for half of a season and then turned into the best pitcher.
Baseball had a lot of it. This is not the only guy. Eovaldi broke down.
Right.
There's no question he had to go back to basics and get back up to where he is now. The Twins had a guy named Bailey Ober, who was having a terrific season till the All-Star game, and then he just, out of the clear blue, was worthless for 2 months. Then he came back in September and was pitching pretty well.
So let me go to the other side of the equation. Stan the Fan Charles is in studio with us. We're doing a deep dive about the Orioles. I feel like there's another layer to the offseason conversation, which is, do you believe they're going to pay all of the guys that are hitting? Do you want to go ahead and can we announce what our next print issue of PressBox, which is going to hit newsstands next week? Do you want to tell everybody about it?
Yeah, well, it's called The Survivors. We've got a neat piece of art done by John Panisi, baseball cards of the 4 guys. And Bautista and Means could have been part of that, but we knew Means, when we were coming up with this, we knew Bautista was most likely not going to pitch. But these are players that came from the Dan Duquette regime that were carried over, not Manny Machado, not Scope, but these were the 4 guys that were left over from Dan Duquette's regime that, frankly, Mike Elias was really, in a classy way, always gave Dan Duquette credit by saying what made this, this rebuild a little bit faster was the fact that we didn't have an empty cupboard when I got here, that there was at least some players there.
So the 4 position players that
Mountcastle, Hayes, Santander, and Mullins.
Yep, and it's a story from Todd Karpovich, and that'll be available on newsstands next Wednesday. I feel like
actually going to be Tuesday.
Tuesday now. Look at that. Tuesday is when it'll be available. Excellent. So I feel like that dovetails into the conversation about, are they going to pay the arbitration figures for all of these guys? Are they looking at certain spots and saying, we have to create, and I know this was addressed yesterday in the availability, do you need to move someone in order to create opportunities for everyday Heston Kjerstad and Colton Cowser and Kobe Mayo? And I don't – this is actually quite interesting to me, because I don't think you can coalesce around who it is that it's time to move on from, or
I'm going to coalesce. I'm going to go back to where my usual whipping boy. I saw a reversion of Ryan Mountcastle in the postseason, that he's just got, and I'm going to believe that Mike Elias and Brandon, as much as they love the kid and love the athleticism, that there's just too much swing and miss when things matter to me.
So moving forward, is O'Hearn still in the equation for you?
I think O'Hearn's in the equation. I don't think they – don't get me wrong. I don't think they view – I don't think they're freaked out by his late season and postseason failings, but I think their eyes are open to the fact that, hey, we caught lightning in a bottle. I don't expect them to sign him to a 4-year, $14 million or something that really changes his life. I think he's going to come in, compete. I think he probably will make the team. He did an awful lot of good things for this team.
So are you moving – let's go piece by piece here. If you move Mountcastle, and I've said before that I think you can do both things here. I think you're using – the way to get pitching, if that's what you're looking to do in the trade market is to acquire, quality starting pitching, you're using Norby and Ortiz to do that. I don't think you get that for Mountcastle. It doesn't typically work out that there's a team that's so starved.
But if you put a package together.
Well, you could do maybe all of it at the same time. But to me, I think you could also do both things. Norby and Ortiz could be used for pitching while you move other guys to try to fortify your minor league system, which suddenly is a little bit emptier than it's been for the last couple of years because all these guys are getting here. Right. So I think you could do – this is the Tampa concept to me that you bring up, that you do both things. You both use where you have a stockpile of talent to improve your major league team, and then you use where you have a stockpile of major leaguers to try to fortify your system a little bit. I think there's an opportunity to do both.
Yep.
You move Mountcastle. Is Santander now your first baseman? Is Kjerstad suddenly playing first base?
Well, I'll tell you, the kind of player I want, and I said it last year, is I look at the season Justin Turner had, and I know he'll be a year older next year. I think we are devoid of guys. Luke and I talk. He uses the term dogs. Justin Turner is a dog, and I don't know that. I saw him listed yesterday in CBS's free agent, but there's an option there. I think it's $13.4 million.
Yeah, his player option for 13.
It's a player option. So the only problem with that is he's not gonna not take 13.4
in order to
come
turn
to
around
the Orioles
and,
for 10. But would he come if the Orioles upped that and said we'll give you two for 24?
Yeah.
Now he's walking away from 24 versus 13. Does he want to bet on himself again? He's at the end of a terrific career. And remember, one thing the Orioles have now, it's not like we're only shopping for the Jordan Lyleses of the world. We're shopping for guys that are really good players because they say, you know what? This wasn't a great team in Boston. I don't know whether it will be next year. I got a chance to win in Baltimore.
I'm not opposed to it, but I think there are bigger. So I'm not opposed to being in the Cody Bellinger market for what it's worth. Give me a left-handed power bat in the middle of this lineup.
I don't see us.
No, I think the market will be too rich for Cody Bellinger. So I don't think that will be where the Orioles end up shopping.
Right.
But I'll come back to: are you purposefully clearing out spots for these younger? Are you purposefully saying?
Well, remember, we got a DH spot.
Right.
Turner can still play a little bit of third base. I don't see Urias back on this team.
No, but you're presuming that Holiday, if he's not here on opening day, is here.
I'm going to think he's here. There's
by
a good
May.
chance he's here in mid-May to June.
Right. And, they're saying all the right things about, and this goes back to the debate about, is it even to your advantage to not have him here on opening day any longer, right?
We'll see.
So
but
you're presuming that at some point Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holiday are the left side of your infield pretty early on next year.
I can get Justin Turner enough at bats between first base, DH, and third base. I can get him enough at bats.
So let me switch from Turner specifically and saying, are you clearing? Are you going into next year saying Colton Cowser's got to have essentially every day at bats? Heston Kjerstad has to have essentially every day at bats, and
I'm not sure. It's a lot of baggage to open up and
because then you're really talking about having to clear multiple spots.
Yeah.
Adding in Holiday, adding in that Mayo will be here at some point next year. I don't think that's an opening day thing, but he'll be here at some point next year.
I think he's probably the year after. I think he's maybe a September call up next year. He didn't do phenomenally well at AAA. Now it's not surprising, What did he do at AAA, Griffin? But do you have any suggestions? You're asking me. Which which of these players do you move away from?
I go back to, I think that now you're talking about a value proposition any longer. And as much as I don't want to move away from Santander, I could see Santander being the one that gives you the most value in
pricey. He's too pricey
and
value. Yeah,
that to me ends up coming, and I hate that, right? Because I love Santander, and I think that he is a kind of a perfect fit for this team.
Yeah.
But if you are committed to and prioritizing these guys, we're not going to just have a bunch of guys on the team. Colton Cowser's an everyday player. He's got to have a spot to play. Unfortunately, the value at the moment for Cedric Mullins isn't great because he's coming off the injury and looked terrible. Now, I also like Cedric Mullins a lot, and what he does, we can squint and say we think that you have pieces in this organization that can do about what Anthony Santander does, if not on the higher end, more than what Anthony Santander does.
But we're also talking about how do you make this lineup a little tougher, a little bit more seasoned, and you're talking about giving up probably the most veteran.
There's no question.
How old is Santander? 29?
That's what
Yeah, they're all 28, 29.
You're talking about giving away one of the guys that is one of your dogs, so to speak.
I agree, and that's what makes this difficult.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, how do you fill in these young guys, give them the playing time we say they need, and they're bursting,
So the default would be then to say that Hayes is that you move.
I don't know.
And
I don't know.
And Hayes is the one that's been the most Jekyll and Hyde probably of the group, probably still gets looked at. Again, do these guys do something that nobody else does? Until Enrique Bradfield is here, no one can play center field like Cedric Mullins plays center field, right? You can't.
Except for one aspect. His throwing is, to me, is a real problem long term.
I thought that before. Yeah. I until it just wasn't. This year I still don't think he has a strong arm, but at no point when he was tested.
I just see the runners going from first to
they're
third.
Trying every time, and yet this year the tide started to turn, and it wasn't the factor. But no, you can't replace that range. There's nothing you can do to replace that range.
Yeah.
So, and the value is down a little bit at the moment. So I don't think now is the time to move on from Cedric Mullins because I just don't think you can recoup what it would be worth, and you're going to lose. You're going to take a step backwards. Austin Hayes could play center field. Colton Cowser could play center field, but
maybe Austin Hayes is the guy to move on from, and Cedric Mullins moves from center to left, and Cowser suddenly his arm is no longer that big an issue because the throws are much shorter. That throw from right center to third, it just
it's
ain't
tricky.
happening.
I get it. I would be surprised if they made it immediately. I just think that they value the defense, the coverage, the ground in the center of the field so highly that
but Cowser and Mullins shouldn't be that big a difference from Hayes and Mullins.
You're saying I just think they prioritize center right now, like that ground that's covered. Because it's up the field, like the catcher, shortstop, second base, center field
So what
thing.
would you do with Cowser? Left field?
I would play Cowser in left field at that point to start, right? And if you get to the point where you just say, look, the arm it's killing us, then flip-flop the two and go that route.
Do you see Hicks back on this team next year?
Not really.
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't either.
And again, it's not like one.
I love the switch hitter.
Right.
I love how he works the count, but the injuries to me are just... you sign him up for, say, $4 million, and suddenly you get 100 games out of him. Now, that might be doable.
What? By the way, did you pull up Kobe Mayo's numbers, Griffin?
Yeah. Sorry, hold on.
Okay, we all over it. We are a well-oiled machine around here. I've got it. Don't worry. Yeah. 267, 393, 512 were his OPS was 905. Sorry.
He must have picked up the last month.
12 home runs in 62 games, 55 RBI. He definitely seemed to adjust well.
Yep.
To the point, I don't think that opening day is what Jackson Holiday could be here opening day.
Yeah.
I don't see any path that Kobe Mayo is on the team on opening day.
I don't know.
But I don't know that I think that it's a late season thing either. I think if he continues,
if he has a monster first 2 months, he'll be pushing it. I
think that's a mid-season type of thing for Kobe Mayo, which doesn't mean that you have to guarantee a spot for him and make your decisions that way.
But the team you're sort of projecting, though, becomes even younger than it is now. And I think that that's a recipe for an inability to win a World Series next year?
I think it's got to be both, though. Like, I think you're both trying to get younger, and at the same time, to your point, if I'm moving on from, say, a Santander, how am I finding an even better bat for the middle of the lineup? And
I think what you'll see that you'd love about Turner when you look at his numbers is Santander high end this year, and he ended up having a big slump, didn't he, in September too?
Yeah.
But his on base percentage was probably .325, I'm guessing, for this year.
That sounds right, but I'll let him confirm it.
So that's high end for Santander. Look at Justin Turner's, even at the age of 37 this year.
But are you worried at all about putting a right-handed bat that's already declining a little bit power-wise and trying to count on it here in Baltimore anymore?
Not really, because of the other stuff he does.
I'm not saying that's not valuable, but especially if we're in a world where you're moving on from, say, a Santander, I think you've got to have a big thumping left-handed bat somewhere in that lineup, and this is what makes all.
I'm anxious to watch Michael Brantley play during the postseason. He's somebody I'd have to know more about his shoulder injury.
Okay.
I'd be willing to bet that they'd be moving on from Michael Brantley.
I could see that. I could see that being, and I could see him being an interesting, again, put a left-handed bat.
Yep.
I'd listen to it. I'm certainly not expecting there to be any power from. That's the difficult part with Michael Brantley.
In our ballpark, he could still hit for some power. You know.
Santander was 325 on base. Turner was 345. They both slumped pretty bad in September, however.
Okay. It's interesting. It's interesting.
But what's Turner's career?
Turner's career
365
is 363.
Right.
I think that they are. It'd be interesting to me if they have already predetermined some of these decisions versus they're keeping an open mind and saying on both ends, we're going in to this offseason listening on a lot of guys at the same time as not fully committing to we have to have spots cleared. It might be that in their mind this is a good problem to have too many.
I wouldn't mind having Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Kobe Mayo, and Jackson Holiday. I wouldn't mind that at all.
No, I'm even saying, or I'm saying all of that. They're saying we don't feel like we have to move on from these veteran guys.
They don't have to. That's why they've got to be smart and strategic, and that's one thing I think that Mike Elias will be. By the way, getting back to Jack Flaherty, I understand the Orioles were very much in the Jordan Montgomery talks, but they wanted Cade Povich, and the Orioles weren't willing to give Cade Povich up. For 2 months of Jordan Montgomery and then having to rebid for him,
right?
You know,
and I'm inclined to say I get it. But
I get that,
and at the same time, but the move that you made
was
awful. Was awful, and that's the difficult part about judging it. I don't have a great feel for what this is going to be, and obviously they are being about as coy as they possibly can be.
Oh, they are tight-lipped, and look, while for the media it's not the most exciting thing in the world to get these sort of unsexy answers, Mike Elias, he's very, very disciplined about this. There's no leaks in this team whatsoever.
Do you think that's because they know what the plan is moving forward? Or
I think they're scared to death of somebody going out. Brandon made the point yesterday that you get the sense that Mike Elias wants his opinion on things, but he said, that is not I am here to manage what they give me, and there'll be a time where I'm called in maybe to recruit a free agent or something like that. And I'm sure they ask him like, hey, what do you think of this player? You'd be dumb not to ask your manager, but he doesn't inject himself the way Buck Showalter would or Earl Weaver would in his day, going in and telling Hank Peters, get me Earl Williams and I'll win you a couple World Series.
I could see if Brandon Hyde would be if Brandon Hyde goes in and says, look, man, this isn't my world, but I just don't want to have less than what I have now.
Yeah.
And if you're going to move on from guys, like, please tell me that there's going to be you're coming back with something
with
too.
Dogs.
Correct.
Dogs.
Dogs.
You got to have a dog.
Griffin, you want to tell everybody what's going on at Live Casino and Hotel?
Yeah, maybe luck wasn't on your side in a recent bet at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel.
The Chiefs
Maryland.
covered last night. It was 10.5,
Yes,
wasn't
they
it?
did, yeah.
So they
They
eked
won
out
by
a
11.
cover. I can't imagine there were a lot of Broncos bettors last night.
Maybe you parlayed, like a divisional series parlay, and you had like the Astros, which was good, but then you had the Orioles, the Braves, and the Dodgers. Well, get ready to turn those losses into winning opportunities with the second chance to win promotion between now and January 4th, 2024. All Live Casino and Hotel Maryland Rewards members will be able to enter their losing bet slips into the second chance to win drum in 2 nights a week. 20 different winners will be chosen. Prizes ranging from Live Casino and Hotel Maryland apparel, sports and social ultimate happy hour prizes, and cash and free play worth up to $500. Drawings will be held every Thursday and Monday at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino in Hotel Maryland. At Arona Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
When we come back in, Stan wants to tell you about his favorite new baseball broadcaster, the guy that has really burst on the scene and is making a difference as an analyst. He wants to talk about that. Plus, we're going to get a tidbit tubular, and before we wrap up the show, we will chat with Noah Eagle ahead of Maryland, Illinois tomorrow. That's all on the way. It's Glenn Clark Radio. The Baltimore County Police Department is now hiring with competitive salaries, including for experienced police officers, starting salaries between over $68,000 and over $82,000 based on your prior service time, accepting up to 7 years of service times with only 6 weeks in the academy, minimum of 2 years prior experience. And police cadet starting salaries at over $32,000 must be between the ages of 18 and 20, but you can apply starting at 17 and a half. Must have a high school diploma or GED equivalent at the time of the hire, U.S. citizen at the time of the hire, and a valid driver's license. So if you have a passion for service and want a career for life, now is the time to join the Baltimore County Police Department. Call 410-887-5542 or visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Visit Harford County this fall. Celebrate arts across Harford September 15th through the 30th with dance, theater, music, and visual arts. September 29th through October 1st is the largest Italian festival in Maryland, featuring entertainment, cooking demonstrations, a bocce tournament, and family fun. If you're headed to the Maryland 5-Star, stay and play in Harford County. While you're there, enjoy the scenic views atop the King and Queen seats and experience pumpkin patches, corn mazes, and fall brews along their Harford Libation Trail. For more info, head to visitharford.com. Maryland open.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Costas Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
The latest edition of PressBox is available now. On the cover, Bo Smolka dives into what's next for Lamar Jackson after receiving one of the biggest contracts in football history. Is Lamar ready to take the Ravens to the next level, now with a new offensive coordinator and new wide receivers? Also inside, we look at what new football coaches Brian Newberry and Pete Shinnick bring to Navy and Towson, respectively. And we meet players from the college football and soccer programs around the state. PressBox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
6 chicken tenders made from fresh, never frozen Royal Farms world-famous chicken, a family-sized order of Western fries, honey mustard dipping sauce, and a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's Royal Farms' new Tucker's Tenders Meal. It's Justin Tucker's favorite, and at only $19.99, it'll be your favorite meal, too. The new Tucker's Tenders Meal, available only at Royal Farms. Now you can kick back, relax, and eat like a champion. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Come for a game, stay for everything else. Book an unforgettable fall getaway in Charm City. Enjoy only in Baltimore festivals, mouthwatering eats, and endless entertainment. Treat yourself to a staycation in the heart of downtown, or try one of the city's many charming neighborhood hotels. And don't miss out on packages for free parking, breakfast, and more. Plan your stay at baltimore.org/hotels.
Don't forget about Project Game Day after every Ravens game this season. It's kind of like this show, except Rita's also there, so I actually think it's pretty good. But hey, you're already here now, so why don't you go ahead and keep listening to GCR.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Friday edition of the program. Stan the Fan is here. Tyus Bowser Show is back this coming Tuesday night. We'll be at Mother's North Grill in Timonium. Come join Tyus and his special guest as hopefully we'll be discussing a big win in London. Tyus Bowser Show is brought to you by AJ Michaels, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, and Superbook Sports. Find out more, PressBoxOnline.com/Bowser. Tuesday night, Mother's North Grill in Timonium for the next Tyus Bowser Show. Stan, you've got a new favorite. We were talking to John Smoltz earlier. I know we all like John Smoltz, but you say there's one better now. There is a new breakout star of this postseason.
Well, he's not doing the color analysis.
Well, right, but
in-game,
studio work is just top notch.
He just blows me away. His energy and his insights to Derek Jeter is just
best.
Unbelievable. I respected him a great deal as a player, but he adds so much to the conversation.
So terrible. By the way, that's not surprising to me whatsoever. I get that they're going with baseball. I don't know what happened. And maybe it's just that he's so relevant in New York, they kind of don't care about how the rest of the country feels about it. But it's the Derek Jeter. We just had this conversation again the other day because I was comparing it to like the talk about Dak Prescott. Rita said it feels personal the way that people talk about Dak Prescott. Who was the Dante Whitner, I think, is analyst out in San Francisco, who after the game last week just said, Dak Prescott sucks. And, objectively, Dak Prescott doesn't suck.
LaShawn McCoy is doing the same thing, I think.
Right. He's not a top 5 NFL quarterback. He's not, but he doesn't suck. He's, talking about him.
Some throws, though, that are head-scratchers to me.
I get it, but he's a talented, capable quarterback who's just not probably going to be good enough to lead you to a championship.
Correct.
But he doesn't, instead of saying appropriate things about Dak Prescott, we go to the next step. We trash Dak Prescott as if he was garbage.
Right.
Like he was Mitchell Trubisky is how we talk about him.
Right.
And it's weird, and I get that. And I said to Rita, I think part of that is we're just sick of having the Cowboys forced down our effing throats. Like at every turn, every time you turn on a national TV window when your team's not playing, it's here's the next Cowboys game or here's the next New York team game. And we're just so sick of it that we end up taking it out on them, right? Like instead of having a reasonable conversation.
I hear you.
The Jeter thing has been forced on us. Derek Jeter is by all means a Hall of Fame baseball player, is an exceptional player.
Nothing more, nothing less.
And they talk about him like he was the greatest player of an era, which is bat-ass nonsense. I don't know that he was a top 5 player of the era. We'd have to really sit down and parse that through and try to figure out what he was. Derek Jeter was talked about. They did a 7-part documentary on Derek Jeter like he was Michael Jordan. He's never been that guy. He's a very good baseball player, but he is not Barry Bonds. He's not the greatest players in the history of the sport.
He was the captain, though.
He was the captain. And so it's just permeated. He matters in one market, so we're telling you he matters, whereas the rest of us are like...
Can you tell me what goes on? And I'm not saying I hate the commercial. The commercial now with his wife in
the car
and him
whole,
in the car.
He's got to drive overnight.
Yeah.
The Jeep
wait a minute.
Wagoneer.
Is he about to take off on the plane? I'm confused
so.
what goes on. It's like the weather, and they're looking up
right.
at the weather, and he's like there with a private
Gotta
jet.
get home.
Gotta get home. But is he renting that car, or is that his car?
He went out and bought a Jeep Wagoneer, and
that seems likely.
Yeah.
For Derek
and then
Jeter.
he sees
Bolted
the
home.
wolf.
Yeah. Right. Dude, I am with you. He has brought nothing. But I'm just not surprised. But at no point has Derek Jeter ever been this particularly compelling media. he's dated a lot of famous women, and that made him a tabloid interesting for some time. But it's not because
I hate him because I'm jealous of him.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, by God, I wish that I had his body count. Don't get me wrong. I'm all in on that. Yeah, Jeets, let's do the whole thing. But the reality of Derek Jeter versus the way he has been propped up to be this larger-than-life thing, that exists in one place. It would be like us trying to get everyone in all of baseball to care about Eddie Murray the way that we care about Eddie Murray. Hell of a player. By the way, let's have a real conversation. Better all-around baseball player than Derek Jeter. Really. Really. But it would be like trying to ask someone in Sheboygan to care deeply about Eddie Murray. They would just say, yeah, he was a good baseball player, but, like, he's just kind of a guy to me. In the rest of the country, no one cares about Derek Jeter the way that people in New York care about Derek Jeter. Yeah. He doesn't carry that cachet the way that these networks want him to. Yeah. He just isn't that guy. And to your point, awful.
Awful.
Just awful. Offers nothing. Zero. And this is the bit where, like, it's even worse because Alex Rodriguez is good at this. Like, Alex Rodriguez is a smarmy, unlikable dude that has proven to be good as a baseball analyst.
Yeah, and he's got charisma.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not like Derek isn't as attractive as Alex Rodriguez. Yeah. He just doesn't have the personality.
It's not there. There's
they did a thing at the end of the broadcast the other night. I think it was 2 nights ago or something. David Ortiz was doing like a little dance, and they were all laughing. But there was right in the middle, the one guy not laughing with his hands in his pockets.
Yeah, it was Jeter.
Was Derek Jeter.
Lame.
I guess he was worried about how he was going to get home.
Yeah, I think. By the way, I think he'll be okay not being good at being an analyst. I think he'll be all right in his life. He wasn't good as a baseball owner. He's not good as an analyst. I think he's still going to be okay.
I don't know whether he was good or bad at the baseball owner thing. He clearly.
Well, I guess it depends on what you're measuring it by, right?
He clearly didn't have. That was a no-win situation.
I don't disagree with that, and I just think that it was pretty clear that, like, it was a bad spot for the Marlins, that he probably should never.
Right.
Lebatard did a whole thing. Remember, Lebatard grilled Manfred about it at the time. Like, did you know when they took over that they were going to be cash strapped on day one, and that they were just going to essentially say, we don't have any money, we can't pay anybody? Like, was that? How did you allow that as an owner? And it's a fair question. Anything else going on in your world? Anything else that you're?
Not really. Just toddling through.
You'll still be doing the Monday chats.
Yep, still doing the Monday, and Newsmaker sometime later in the week. We'll continue.
The Monday segments with Stan or with Luke and Ross will continue through the off season every week.
I'm sure we'll filter in a little bit more of visiting some old teammates of Ross's and those. I'm fine to have Luke on those. Luke seems to say, I'll back out when you have a guest on. But I want to do a special couple weeks out on Brooks.
Okay.
I want to get like 3 teammates, maybe like Palmer, DeSense's and Singleton, or Bobby Gritch. Something I'd really like to dig into Brooks a little bit.
Very cool. But that's every Monday, Stan, Ross, and Luke, Facebook.
Roughly 4 o'clock-ish. We're aiming for.
Very good.
And I've got Buck Davidson, one of the riders that will ride in this year's
5-star.
5-star. That starts a week from yesterday, the 19th.
Are you going out? What days are you going out?
I go Thursday and Saturday.
All right, I'll try to go with you on Thursday.
Okay.
I will try to clear everything out so that next Thursday works.
Yep.
I got a couple of football games next week I got to work around, but I think I can make Thursday happen. All right, let's get a tidbit.
Be prepared. It's the time to get out there is something. It's like
I guess I don't think about that, right?
It's like an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes,
Doesn't seem like it's possible for anything to be that far away.
But you going home, you probably chop 25 minutes off.
I don't know. I would probably duck back 95 down to 152 to go home. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna come out though. I'm gonna come out. I think the date's gonna be Thursday. I think that's just the way it's gonna work out for me. Tidbit is brought to you today by, this one's brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. before you do tidbit really quickly, because we mentioned the next print issue of PressBox, these are the final days for you to go get this one. If you haven't picked it up yet, get to your neighborhood Royal Farms. It'll be gone after this weekend, so go get it right now.
The Chiefs and Broncos, they did play last night, and the Chiefs, of course, did win, extending their winning streak against the Denver Broncos to 16 straight victories over the Broncos. It is tied for the third longest win streak versus a single opponent in NFL history.
I still feel like we could use a little more you, Griffin.
I wasn't as close to the mic that time. Maybe that was on me.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. You want to try to guess what two teams had a longer win streak against one team? I mean, yeah, it's a guess.
That's utter guess. Was one of them the Patriots?
No, the Patriots not on there.
All right, was one of them the Cowboys?
No.
49ers.
There you go, 49ers.
Had a win streak against the Cardinals.
Not the Cardinals.
I guess we got to go back to the old divisions because the Cardinals were actually in the East.
God, I can't remember the old divisions where who.
Well, it's a team that's in their current division.
Oh, it's team Seattle?
Not Seattle.
Rams.
Yes, the Rams. The Rams. In the 90s,
How
they
many?
won 17 straight.
Wow.
The Niners did against the Rams.
Do you know who else was in the West at the time? Do you remember? So remember, Dallas and Arizona or Phoenix were in the East with New York, Washington, Philadelphia.
Right.
What the hell?
Oh, God.
It's San Francisco was in the same division as Atlanta. The Falcons were in the NFC West.
Right. That made a
The
lot of
Cardinals and the Cowboys were in the East.
Right.
The Falcons were in the NFC West. I don't know, man.
And now the Cowboys are in the AFC,
I don't remember.
NFC East. Yeah, the Cowboys are in the East currently.
They're still in the East, yes. Not in the South, right.
And then once
in hindsight, you'd say, why wouldn't Carolina, say, be in the East?
Yeah.
And the Cowboys could be in the South. Right, they're right next to New Orleans. But they were kind of grandfathered into the East, basically.
Right. This team won 20 in a row against the Bills from 1970.
The Dolphins.
Yes.
Yeah, the Dolphins.
Yes, the Dolphins in the 70s.
Yep.
Do you want the baseball postseason multi-home runs tidbit or a tight end tidbit?
Oh, we were going to do that yesterday. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So Nick Castellanos actually adds his name to this list now.
That's right.
With another multi-home run game. He is also the first player in MLB history to have multiple home runs in back-to-back playoff games.
First player ever, right?
First player ever, yes, with back-to-back games with multiple home runs.
Boy, did he hit that ball. That second ball.
I thought that was going to the next deck at one point.
22 guys all time have hit have had multiple home runs in more than one playoff game.
In a series.
In all time, and only
in their careers,
yeah,
they've had multiple games with multiple home runs.
Correct. Since 2009, have done it, including the Castellanos. Can you
22
name?
Since 2009.
No, 22 all time.
All time.
Yes, 9 since 2000.
Okay.
So can you name the other 8?
I mean, I feel like it's going to be some of the same guys that were on the list yesterday.
Yeah.
Manny Ramirez.
Manny Ramirez misses the cutoff.
Really?
Yeah, because he had games in the 90s that.
Oh, okay. So
how about Justin Turner?
No, not Justin Turner.
Altuve.
No, not Altuve.
Oh, this is really surprising now.
Jordan Alvarez?
No. Why is Jordan Alvarez? Yeah, Jordan Alvarez only one.
Alex Bregman.
Not Alec Bregman.
Correa.
Carlos Correa.
Had to get there eventually. Name all the Astros, and we'll get there.
Does have multiple games.
Not to say Gurriel.
That was just one.
Right? Yeah, we
really.
We shot our wad on that.
Yeah.
Bernie Williams would have been the 90s. God, this is going to drive me nuts.
Since 2000?
Yes, since 2000.
Pujols.
No, not Pujols.
Chipper Jones.
It's got to be somebody.
Chipper Jones would be on the other lists. Yeah.
What, before
2000, yeah. Maybe I should have done the 13 guys before.
David Ortiz.
No.
What?
David Ortiz.
What is this list?
Guys with multiple home runs?
Alex Rodriguez.
No, not Alex Rodriguez.
Still somehow Barry Bonds.
No, not Barry Bonds. I don't think he's on.
Hit the longest home run I've ever seen in a World Series. I still don't think that ball's landed.
I'm going to stop guessing incorrectly.
What the? We got to come up with these. All right. Hang on. No. We can work.
Yeah,
wait. Let's work through this. Yes, that's a good way to do this.
One of them a Boston Red Sox?
He was. I'm not sure what team he did this with.
Was when he did it?
Mitch Moreland.
I don't know because he's been on the playoffs with multiple teams, and
so it's not Moreland.
It's not Moreland, no. So we did the Phillies.
Pierce.
Not Pierce. Not Steve Pierce. We did the Phillies yesterday, remember? So there's
Oh, okay. So Utley.
yes.
Okay. Howard.
No, not multiple times. Only one game for Ryan Howard.
Worth.
Jason Worth multiple times.
Any more?
No. Those are
Okay.
the 2 Phillies.
Now back to the Red
Bryce Harper
Sox.
has 1 for what it's so he
The
would
Red
not
Sox,
qualify.
but it might not be the Red Sox.
Yeah, he's been on the Red Sox.
Jacoby Ellsbury.
Not Jacoby Ellsbury.
He
He was on the Dodgers
Victorino.
this season.
It's
Shane
Betts?
Victorino.
No, not Mookie Betts.
on the Dodgers this year.
This one's very random.
Enrico Hernandez?
Yeah.
Kike Hernandez.
Yeah.
Has had multiple games.
I
with
knew
multiple
it.
home
Yeah, he
runs.
had it all along. All right, Yankees. Are the
Oh,
Yankees?
sorry, there's one more. One more
One-
former Astro.
One more Astro.
Former Astro.
Jesus. One more.
Michael Brantley.
Not Michael
Oh,
Brantley.
He's a
you
current
said a former.
Astro, yeah.
Yeah.
One more former Astro. Springer?
Yes, George Springer.
Okay.
Multiple games, multi-home runs
All
in
right.
the playoffs.
All right. Are there Yankees on the list?
No Yankees on
Are
the
there
list.
Blue Jays on the list?
No more Blue Jays.
Is there a Cub on the list?
No Cubs.
Giants.
No Giants.
What are we doing?
He was a New York Met
New York Met?
for a long
They're not
time.
normally good in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
in the mid to late 2000s, and then he ended his career with the Astros. I don't think he had any multi-home run games with the Astros, but
Beltran?
Carlos Beltran, yes.
That's a good one.
So we were missing. Carlos Beltran has 3
Okay.
multi-home run
Braves.
games.
We've got
Are there
6
Braves?
of them. There's a Brave in
One
there.
more Brave. We have one Brave,
Is
and then
Acuna?
not Acuna.
Is it a current Brave?
It is a current
Ozuna.
Brave. Yes, Marcelo
Yeah.
Ozuna. And then
I
this
knew
guy,
it.
he was a tidbit. I forget what the question was, but he's an angel,
Angel. Tim Salmon.
not Tim Salmon.
That played in, but this is in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So he didn't do it with the Angels.
Well, they
We could go back to
Yeah,
the.
okay.
Remember, they won a World Series. JT Snow.
not JT Snow.
How about Troy Gloss?
Troy Gloss.
Ah,
there
nice
you go.
call.
Well done.
Nice
Nice.
I knew it.
Most
Yeah,
all
right.
time with multi-home run game. Most games all time is Babe Ruth. 4 multi-home
That
run
guy.
games.
Was he any good?
But we only have 8 of the 9.
Nick Castellanos.
Yeah,
Okay.
finishes the
Oh,
list.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
finishes the list. All right, that was an adventure. That was very adventurous.
That may have prompted the most wrong
Right?
guesses
We
in the
were
history
all
of
over the
GCR.
place. All over the place. Don't forget that you can sign up today at Superbook. Use the codes GlennClark23 or StanCharles23. We won't be offended if you use the other one. I mean, I definitely won't come seek you out and beat you up at your house. That won't happen. Use whichever one you'd like because you get the same offer either way. Same day, first bet match up to $250, win or lose. So, for example, this weekend you sign up, you throw $250 in that old till, and then you wander out and you say, let me take a look at that Ravens line. Let me see. Oh, it's gone up to 4.5, huh? Well, I liked it at 3.5. I don't know if I like it at 4.5 anymore. So you bet the Titans. And you lose. It's all good, man. You still get $250 worth of free bets right back just because you use that code, GlennClark23 or StanCharles23. Download the Superbook app. Go to superbook.com right now to get signed up. Tubular is brought to you by Guilford Hall Brewery. Speaking of the Ravens, this is the place to be on Sunday. You're ready for the biggest game day party in Baltimore. Join us at Guilford Hall Brewery this Sunday, October 15th, for the official Ravens-London game watch party. Getting started early with live music, bottomless mimosas, unlimited Guilford beer, Dunkin' coffee and signature cocktails, games, the Kids Zone, appearances from special guests, including Ravens legend Jimmy Smith, Ravens cheerleaders, the Marching Ravens Band, and Poe. Doors open at 8 a.m. Those all-you-can-drink tickets still available at GuilfordHall.com, $30 for all-you-can-drink beer, and they're open until 9 o'clock. Like, do that math real quick. Spend the entire day watching football at Guilford Hall. Also, you can rally your flock. Get to Guilford Hall on Sunday. It's free to the public. All-you-can-drink wristbands available for purchase at GuilfordHall.com. There's also another option. I think it's $35 to do beer and mimosas.
Wow.
So
Man.
get on that right
Do
now.
either of you have a Minnesota Twin Chicago White Sox? I am drawing such a...
What, Alexi Ramirez? I don't know. Was he a twin? I don't know.
Was he a twin?
Ramirez, no.
Was Mike Pagliarulo a White Sox?
He might have played for the
Was he a White Sox?
Boy, he would be like a 0.2%.
God, was he a White Sox, though? I can't.
I'll find out.
All right.
Hold on.
Why do I feel like he was?
There you I know he was a Twin.
Yeah, he was not a White Sox. Don't use him. He was definitely not a White Sox. Why am I blanking on this? Why am I struggling with a twin White Sox?
Yeah, it feels like such a
right. Like
was Adam? No, a twin.
Yeah, I don't think Adam Dunn ever played for the Twins. This is nuts. All right, give me a minute. We'll keep thinking about this. In the meantime,
every time there's one of these grid, there's always like some of them, like 7 of them are going, who played for this?
Right.
And this? But a lot of times it's just one. I mean, I've got 8 of the 9 people. I got one guess left.
Twins,
and I cannot think of a.
Why am I struggling so much with this? Twins, White Sox. For the White Sox, I don't think so. No.
I'm trying to think of a pitcher who might have pitched.
Twins.
I'm gonna try.
Oh, I got one.
Go ahead.
A guy that was in the news a lot this year. Because I think cancer.
Liam Hendricks.
Liam Hendricks. He was a twin, right? Wasn't he a twin? Wasn't he a twin?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Wasn't Liam Hendricks?
No, now I'm confused. Yeah, right.
I know he was we got him from the Blue Jays.
I think I could have sworn that he was a twin.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
Oh man, this is way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Did I have one other idea?
Yes.
He was okay. All right, very good, very good. All right.
He's
Tell me if Jim Thome was with the Twins at one point, because I know he was a White Sox. I think he was with the Twins too.
He was, yes, in 2011. Yes, so Jim Thome.
All right, there you go.
That's who I'll use because I think
All right, because of the recency bias thing, man. All right, very good. Here's what's coming up this weekend, totally tubular-wise. Not a lot tonight. The Capitals play their first game of the season tonight, 7:30 against the Penguins on ESPN Plus and Hulu. Maryland field hockey takes on Michigan at 4 on the Big Ten Network, so block out the rest of your day for that. Tomorrow, college football. NBC's got Illinois, Maryland at 7:30. Navy's at Charlotte at 2. It's only on ESPN Plus. The big games tomorrow, USC Notre Dame 7:30 on NBC, and then the really big one tomorrow, of course, is on ABC. Oregon Washington at 3:30.
Jim Thome was, but he was surprisingly 24%.
Jesus,
it doubled my.
Wow,
total.
We really ruined everything. Thanks for nothing.
Thanks,
Sunday morning, NFL Network, and if you don't get NFL Network, WBAL 11 for Ravens-Titans at 9:30 a.m. The TV games locally in the afternoon, Fox 49ers-Browns at 1, Eagles-Jets at 4:25, CBS Commanders-Falcons at 1. Of course, Sunday night, NBC for Giants-Bills.
And I know this isn't tubular, but it's on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Is Concordia against?
It's just streaming.
Well,
streaming on
yeah,
YouTube.
well, we didn't get radio rights yet.
Streaming.
Yeah,
for Concordia.
I talked to Chuck.
Yeah, work on that. Right, work on getting some clearance for that.
Concordia St. Mary's, right?
Yes, Concordia St. Mary's. Yeah, B conference.
What's the spread in that game?
Yeah, what is?
Go
Go to Superbook. See if we can pull that up. Game 1 of the ALCS Sunday night, 8:15 on Fox between the Rangers and Astros. We know Justin Verlander is pitching for Houston. They haven't announced yet in Texas, but I assume
I would think they'd do the same thing they did in Game 1 of our series.
Do the Dunning-Heaney thing.
Yeah,
Evaldi will be ready to go, right?
That's a thing. Now,
But doing just
Dunning
Dunning and Heaney,
thing.
they're a package deal. That's the way that it works. They're actually going to be on Kimmel together later tonight. And ABC for Game 3 of the WNBA Finals as the Vegas Aces try to close out the New York Liberty Sunday at 3 o'clock on ABC. Did you know that Kelsey Plum is married to former Raven Darren Waller? I did not know that.
I think
I did not know that. I just learned that
they
this
got married
week.
over the summer,
Yeah,
right?
I did not realize that. It's kind of wild to me. All right, anything non-sports?
It worked out when Waller was
yeah,
in
Waller
Vegas.
was in Vegas, right.
Yeah,
now he's in New
it's-
York. Yep. Anything non-sports?
Yeah, it's a big weekend. I guess nature is healing, you know. They're bringing shows and
Actors
movies
still
are
aren't working.
Yeah. New episode of Gen V on Prime Video. Also a movie called The Burial, which looks pretty good, actually. It's based on a true story. Jamie Foxx plays a lawyer. Tommy Lee Jones is in it, is like his client, and I can get into it, but just go check it out. The Burial on Prime Video. Goosebumps, new series. They're like a new series of Goosebumps is coming out on Disney Plus and Hulu, where it's like more modern. But it's Goosebumps. It looks. They were playing Travis Scott's song Goosebumps over
how about
the
that?
trailer. It was
How
funny.
about that?
Do either of you have Apple? TV.
Not anymore. I canceled it again.
Canceled it.
Yeah.
My mom has it.
Did you have it?
Yes.
Once I got through Orioles games, I canceled it. I'll get it again.
Great movie, Flora and Son.
Oh, okay. Was
You
that
heard
out
of it?
last
No,
week?
I don't know anything about
And
it.
the star of it is a 30-year-old Irish actress. She's the daughter of Bono.
Really?
Eve Hewson.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a fabulous movie.
All right.
Yeah, like Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in it, right? And
Yeah.
he like gives guitar lessons over a Zoom.
Yeah.
Jordan Hewson.
Yeah.
Or Eve Hewson. Eve Hewson
Yeah.
is her name. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Can give it a chance.
I'm interested.
New show on Apple TV Plus this week. Brie Larson is in Lessons in Chemistry, and it's based on I don't think it was a true story. But she's a woman in the 50s, and she's like a really smart scientist, and they end up giving her a cooking show.
Okay.
Because like she uses chemistry with
Oh,
cooking.
that sounds interesting.
Yes, it is Brie Larson, so it looks very good.
Brie Larson.
It's such a tough thing for me with Brie Larson because like Captain
You
Marvel.
dated her and
Yeah,
she
right.
broke
It's
up
an
with you?
awkward thing. Plus, I can never tell her apart from Brie Olson, the porn star. Right? Like which one is which? I never know.
can't?
No, it's not the case
How do you
whatsoever.
know what a porn star
I believe
looks
she
like?
was married to Charlie Sheen at one point. That's the only reason why I'm familiar with that. No, it's tough
How
with Brie
long did
Larson.
that marriage last?
I'm gonna guess not very long.
About a week.
Yeah. The thing with Brie Larson is like I thought Captain Marvel was fine.
Right.
A lot of people hated it. The biggest problem was how stiff Brie Larson was, and it was such a fine line between. But that's what someone who went through what her character went through should seem like. Versus, right, but this is still a superhero movie, and you want the people involved to feel like they're emoting a little bit more. So it's just been a complicated thing for me with Brie Larson because, like, they brought her in to be, like, literally one of the top dogs within this franchise, and it was sort of when she arrived. So
Yeah.
it's been tough.
Well,
I'm
this
not
is not
really-
Marvel, so you
It's
can give
true,
it a
and I like Brie Larson other than Marvel, so I'd be willing to give it a shot.
Good news for Giants fans.
Oh?
Daniel Jones is out versus the Bills with neck injury.
So they have a chance now.
Yeah.
Right. I don't even know who is their backup. Is it
still
Tyrod?
Yeah,
Is it Tyrod? I
Yeah,
love
we got
Tyrod.
Tyrod on Sunday night.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. On Peacock, since it's Halloween, Friday the 13th, John Carpenter's Suburban Screams. It's just a horror. If you're really into horror stuff, they're bringing to life some true stories told by the survivors. And
Sure.
it looks scary and chilling.
Sure.
There's a story about a rabbit man running around with a hatchet, which is apparently a true story, and like.
Great. That sounds like a
SNL.
pleasant way to spend the night. Oh, yeah,
Some people are
SNL is
into it,
back.
Yeah, SNL is back. Pete Davidson is
Yeah.
hosting with Ice Spice.
So, am I right? Taylor Swift was at the game
She was in the
last
game
night?
last night. They kept it in their pants for the most part, the Amazon broadcast. They did not just turn it into a full-on look at Taylor Swift on every play.
How many more night games? Because she doesn't do afternoon.
That's a good point.
games.
She didn't show up in Minnesota for the afternoon
Right.
game. Well, but the first game was an
Was
afternoon
it,
game.
it was a 4:00 game.
Yeah.
so
It was
maybe
a 4 o'clock?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first one
I've
was.
seen her on all the night games.
Yeah, she
How
did
many
the
more
Jets
night
game.
games are they on this
Well, they're
year?
pretty
Probably
popular.
lots,
They probably
yeah.
have a few.
Yeah.
Rick and Morty season 7 on
I didn't
Sunday
realize
nights
that was still a
as
thing.
Well, yeah, Adult Swim at 11 on Sunday nights.
All right, anything else? We've gone pretty deep here, and it's 12:30. We still have to
That
talk
is
to
everything.
Noah Eagle.
Yeah, that's right. We have Noah Eagle.
All right. Tubular was also brought to you today by the Baltimore County Police Department. Don't forget Saturday, October 28th for the hiring and community event at the Public Safety Building, 700 East Joppa Road. If you're thinking about a career in the Baltimore County Police Department, you can go through the whole process, written test, agility test.
There is still an
Still an agility test, Stan. But we can start training whenever you're ready, as well as the application process. And if you're not thinking about it, you just want a safe, fun environment for your kids to get their costumes on and go get some candy. It is also a community trunk or treat. So we'll see you on October 28th at the Public Safety Building with the Baltimore County Police Department. You going to be on with the boys tomorrow morning?
I'll be on with the boys tomorrow. More postmortems.
Bat around back to normal time, 10 to noon tomorrow morning, and Stan will join them. Then he'll be in action again Monday afternoon at Stan the Fan on Twitter as well. Thanks today to John Smoltz, thanks to Bo Smolka, and as well thanks to Noah Eagle, who we're about to hear from. We'll get them all up in the greatest hits section of the
Oh my God, it's so good.
tab at GlennClarkRadio.com. Project Game Day on Sunday after the Ravens game. Then we'll be back on Monday. Is Ben Verlander joining us on Monday?
Yes, Ben Verlander
Like
will be
Ben
joining us.
Verlander. He'll join us on Monday's
Well, you
show.
didn't want to talk to me.
Oh, he had said some things. Tarico got to him is really what happened there. Tirico said. What Smoltz, said. Yeah. Smoltz actually hates Tirico. So
Smoltz
when he
was
found
like-
out about it, he
Yeah.
was like, now I want to be on the show.
Smoltz was like, I don't know. And I was like, Stan Charles will be there. And he said,
Oh, yeah, right. That's my guy. And we'll do that. Thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, Guilford Hall Brewery, Live Casino and Hotel, the Maryland 5-Star, A.J. Michaels, the Baltimore County Police Department, Royal Farms, Costa Sin, Superbook Sports, Harford County, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin, at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great weekend. Go Ravens, go Maryland, go Navy, Duke sucks. We wrap up today's show. We preview Maryland, Illinois with Noah Eagle from NBC. We're joined now here on GCR by someone who's, of course, the relationship that we've had with Ian over the years. He's been one of our favorites. This is our first opportunity to meet and get to know his son, and you're going to get to know him on Saturday. It's the second time this season, I believe, that he has had Maryland as they get ready to take on Illinois. 3:30 on NBC and Peacock alongside Todd Blackledge. He is Mr. Noah Eagle, and he is with us here on GCR. Noah, it's Glenn. It's great to meet you, man. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us.
No, Glenn, I appreciate you having me. So what you're telling me is this is also my first chance to just completely tarnish my dad's reputation with you.
Please. It's funny. He's the nicest human being I've ever come across. It's insane. He has taken time on Thanksgiving to call in on my shows over the years. Like, he's the nicest human being I've ever come across. So if you have anything that, like, I can needle him with next time he does a Ravens game this season, please share it with me, because most of our conversations end up going like this. You're Ian Eagle, and I'm not. I'm really glad that you like me. Like, that's normally the way that it goes.
Yeah, I think people, the low-hanging fruit with him, and ironic that I use that word.
Height,
it's the food stuff, right?
Okay.
Yeah, everyone likes to attack the food stuff, but I'm the least picky eater in the family, but that's not really a high bar clear. So I can't just sit here and be like,
all right,
I
wait a
eat
second,
all
though.
this
Hang on.
exotic stuff.
If you guys go out for dinner, because I remember did you get a chance to go out for dinner? Because he was doing a Ravens game around the same time he did a Maryland game, right?
Yeah, last year.
Okay, did you get a chance to go out for dinner? And if you do, when you do go out for dinner, honest to God, what does he order?
So we didn't go to dinner then, but
Okay.
I have had dinner at some point in my life.
Yeah,
with him,
maybe a
which has
couple,
been
right?
nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. When we do, I would say I don't want to say he's overly basic, but I don't not want to say that.
But you're not
if
saying,
that
like,
makes sense.
okay, but hang on a second. You're really going to ruin this for me. You're not going to tell me, like, he's ordering chicken fingers, correct?
I mean, that happens.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's a fan. He likes fingers of the chicken variety.
No,
for
how do
sure.
you still go to dinner with him? Like, I know he's your dad, and I know he's an American icon, but, like, for God's sakes, how do you see yourself out that way?
You know what? Sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. I think that's what I've learned in life.
I can't believe it. I didn't realize it was that bad. I really didn't.
No, listen, he'll branch out. Every now and then he'll get a burger.
Oh, no. Oh, man. You're ruining, like, a hero for me right now. Oh, God. All right, but so you're picky, but you're not that. Like, will you have, when you come to Maryland, do you have any seafood at all?
If it's presented, I will have it. Yes.
Okay.
I think that's kind of my mentality in life is if it's presented to me, I will at minimum try it.
All right.
But yes, if there's a crab cake present, I will consume it.
We are good now. We are good. Everything is fine as long as it's the people that say, nah, I don't do any of that. And I'm like, oh, man, we have nothing in common. This is going to have to end here because it is in our DNA. No, this is an interesting time for Maryland, right? Because I think everybody would ask, how do they respond to that a week ago? And they were in such good shape early on against Ohio State. They had a 10-0 lead. They had the ball. And then it kind of came apart at the seams. And I feel like there is still a lot to like about this Maryland team and that you can read into some of what they did in order to be competitive and think that they'll have a chance to be competitive again. They are a team that has made a lot of critical mistakes this year. What do you make of how they respond to what happened a week ago?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of the main points. I would say the best thing for them is that although he had been polarizing certainly last week and at points throughout the season and definitely his career, Talia Tagovailoa is still the most experienced quarterback in the Big Ten, and he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And when you've got a guy like that leading you, who's been through the ups and downs of full seasons and an entire career, especially in the modern day with all these guys who realistically don't stay to the level that Talia has, I think that's already an upper hand in terms of being able to bounce back from a tough loss. But the point that I think you made that's 100% accurate is, and I'm assuming this is what Mike Locksley is probably telling his team and probably told them when they got back and probably told them this entire week leading up to this game with Illinois, you change maybe 4 plays in that game, and it's completely different. I mean, certainly in the first half, and I know Leo was the first to admit his own mistakes, but the pick six completely flips the game, and you're up 10-0 with the ball. If you drive down and get more points, you're putting a lot of pressure on a team that has already had to face their own internal and external pressures throughout the season. And then, of course, the big mistake that everybody saw was the end of the first half. The second quarter, not getting points on that final drive, deep in Ohio State territory, going into the half tied. You know, you feel like you probably could have been up at least 10 more, if not more than that. So those are disappointing mistakes because they're limitable. You know, they're avoidable. And I think that Talia, being as experienced as he is, and more than anything, as detailed as he is. You know, when we did that Maryland game week 2, we talked to him, got a sense of what his note-taking and his attention to detail looked like. I mean, it's copious. It's a different level. So just the fact that they've got a guy like that as a leader, and they've got a coach in Mike Locksley who really can inspire with the best of them. And I think his message, like I said, is, look, guys, we were right there. We got 2 more cracks at 2 big boys in the Big Ten East. So let's just make sure that we lock in and limit those mistakes moving forward.
Noah Eagle is with us, and he and Ty Blackledge on the call on Saturday, tomorrow on NBC for Maryland, Illinois at 3:30. No, I feel like the infuriating part is, like, you don't have that margin for error against these top teams in the Big Ten, and yet these you pointed out the game he did earlier where they fall behind early in the game, right? And that they've just been so imperfect this season, and it feels like that right now. You could make an argument that Maryland, talent-wise, is as close as they could possibly be to those top 10 teams in the Big Ten, right? They're not there, but they're as close as you can get being a Maryland type of program. It's just really frustrating for it to be these self-inflicted wounds. That thing that happened at the end of the first half, it happened at the end of the first half the week before that, too, where they failed to get points. Like, it's just almost mind-numbing that these are the things that continue to happen for this team.
Yeah, it is. And I'd say that it's frustrating. I would get that from the fans' perspective. I get that from the team's perspective. And I think that we felt that from the team and its coaching staff at points throughout the season, and certainly after last week's game, just knowing that the opportunity felt like it slipped away, and a key opportunity to get a program-defining win. And that's really what this season's been about. It's taking that next step. And to your point, this is as close in terms of the talent gap as Maryland's been in a long time to the Ohio States, to the Michigans, to the Penn States. And when you're close like that, you've got to pounce, because that doesn't always happen. You're not going to be recruiting at their same level. You're not going to get transfers at their same level. But Mike Locksley is great in both those departments. And we've seen how he's built a team now 5 years into his tenure. They've got the experience at the quarterback position. They've got up-and-coming defensive players along with some studs that have returned that are more veteran presences. So they've got all the pieces. It's just about, to your point, limiting mistakes, which I will say, obviously it's disappointing that it had to happen again at Ohio State to almost realize it. But a lot of times with these teams and a lot of times with these seasons, there's a turning point or a defining moment. You know, we did Michigan last week, and 2 years ago, Michigan was coming off that COVID season where it was a low point. I mean, they went 2-4 in the shortened season. Jim Harbaugh, it was the hot seat of all hot seats. You know, it was the hottest seat. It was like a hot pocket that you had to drop from your hand that you couldn't hold, or you would immediately burn yourself.
And yet somehow it's still cold on the inside. It makes no sense.
Right, yeah, no, it makes right. The dichotomy of temperatures never quite checks out. But people wanted his head on the stick, and you know what we talked to the players about was there was a defining moment in the following season in 2021 when, after they lost to Michigan State, they held a players-only meeting and basically said, we won't let this define us moving forward. And since then, all they've done is win football games, go to back-to-back college football playoffs, and this year, number 2 in the country and firmly in position to compete for an NCAA championship. And look, I'm not saying that Maryland's going to do that right away. I'm not saying they're going to college football playoff. But what I'm saying is they can use this as a defining moment of their season. And if they can find a way now to really take the look and analyze what they've done so far this season, to all those mistakes that you mentioned, they've got 2 more cracks. And I think that's, a lot of people look at the Big Ten East as a curse, but you can also look at it as a blessing because that means you've got 3 legitimate opportunities to be that David to the Goliath. And if they can find a way, even for just one of those 2 games against Penn State or against Michigan, to dethrone one of those giants in the conference, that's a massive, massive deal.
It feels like it would. No, it's a great point, and it feels like that's the biggest thing right now. We know there's been progress. We know that they're in a better place as a program than clearly they were when it was upheaval and in the aftermath of the Jordan McNair tragedy. It just was awful. We know that the program is on the right trajectory, but it seems like the biggest thing is, can you go from being competitive with, because they've been competitive now with Ohio State a few times, and they were competitive with Michigan a year ago. Can you finally close that gap and at least win one of these games? And what that would do for this program and this fan base to figure out a way to just win one, not win the Big Ten, not go to the Rose Bowl or the playoff, to win one of these games in a solid season would be, I think, program-changing for Mike Locksley and everybody at Maryland.
Yeah, no doubt. And the good news is that both those matchups are at home. To go to Columbus and do it would have been icing on top. And the fact that it was a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, Mike Locksley had talked about their goal was to get it to the fourth quarter and see where they're at. And he just didn't like where they were at down the stretch. And, part of that is wear and tear against a great team. I think that's what makes Michigan so good, is how deep they are. And so that's a challenge moving forward. But Penn State has an inexperienced quarterback. You're getting them on your own home field in front of your own fans. Like, to me, that's the key, is can you get high-level support? Can you fill CQ Stadium? Can you get that feel of, this is a big game, let's go out and win it for our program, for our city, for our community, all of that stuff. And I think, you don't need to give these guys the extra motivation, but having that right by your side is a big deal, to not have to go to Beaver Stadium, to not have to go to Ann Arbor. That's a difference maker. And so the fact that you get both of them at home is already a boost. And now you've got the bad taste in your mouth, recognizing that you maybe let one slip away. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this team because I really do think that Coach Locksley is excellent. I think he's a great motivator, a great recruiter. I think that he's got 2 outstanding coordinators, and Josh Gaddis has a chance to really stick it to the rest of the country, showing that he's been at the top of his game for quite some time. And so to have him involved and maybe being the ingredient to put them over the top could be interesting. But as we talked about, all the pieces are there. So it just comes down to execution against these top teams.
All right, on the flip side, Noah, how do we explain Illinois? I mean, this was an 8-win team a year ago that I think a lot of people believed was on the upswing. And, I mean, even the wins they have this year have been close against bad teams or lower-level teams. What is going on with Illinois, and is there any risk that this team is, on actually better than what the results have been? And if Maryland is still a little bit down, this could end up being the week where they remind everybody that they still have the opportunity to turn their season around.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the biggest key. I remember when I was at Syracuse, my senior year, the team was really good. And they won 10 games. They ended up winning 10 games. But the big one was they went to Clemson and had a chance to beat the eventual national champions. Trevor Lawrence gets knocked out of the game,
right,
and Syracuse has him on the ropes, and then Chase Price, the third-string quarterback, comes in and leads the game-winning drive. And you go, wait, what just happened? Well, Syracuse didn't recover in time, and the following week they lose to a Pitt team that they were better than that year. They were just plain better. And I'm not saying Pitt was bad, but Syracuse was better. Just look at what they did all year. Should have won the game. And so the boomerang loss is always a legitimate concern. Illinois, it's been interesting to watch this year. They've had their struggles in a variety of areas and categories. Defensively, they still have a lot of studs, especially up front. I mean, Jerjon Newton is probably going to be a first-round pick. He's monstrous, 6'2", about 300 pounds, but athletic, can move incredibly well, just smart football player, high football IQ. And on the other side, you've got Keith Randolph, who last year was an all Big Ten performer himself. So you've got two big boys up front that are still going to wreak havoc in the backfield if you can't block them. So it's going to be a big day for Delmar Glaze at that left tackle spot. He's got to be on his P's and Q's. He's got to be prepared to see NFL level talent. But to answer your question, you lost a lot of that. You lost a lot of that top end talent they had last year. You know, in the secondary in particular, you had 3 guys drafted in the first 3 rounds. And when you lose talent like that, it's hard to replenish at a program like Illinois. If it's a program like Michigan, if it's a program like Ohio State or Penn State, you've got that depth. And if you don't have, you can go and find someone else's starters and have them transfer in the NIL era, the transfer portal era. That's easier than it's ever been for the top-end programs. But we just talked about this with P.J. Fleck last week from Minnesota, and he said that there's a reason that all these other teams are getting younger and younger each year, and you have to develop the talent, is because they don't have that same luxury. They don't have the same resources. I'd say Illinois is probably similar. They also lost their starting quarterback, Tommy DeVito, from a year ago. He graduated, eventually signed in the offseason with the New York Giants. So you're talking about a guy who's a fringe NFL quarterback, and now you've got Luke Altmaier, who's come in from Ole Miss, and he's just struggled. He just hasn't taken care of the football. They do have a legitimate number 1 receiver, and that would be my concern for Maryland. We've got to see if Tarheeb still is going to be able to go, because if he can, that changes things. If he can't, we saw what Marvin Harrison Jr. did last week against some of those fill-ins. But Isaiah Williams, the wide receiver for Illinois, a former quarterback who actually started at QB a couple of years ago for the Illini, he's dangerous. So that's the name to look out for.
All right, Noah Eagle, who's a man who will have a crab cake, who will enjoy. You bring up some oysters or something to the booth on Saturday. He'll actually enjoy those, and then I got to deal with that the next time I talk to your dad, because that really bothers the heck out of me. And I saw
listen. I need to say, I think he would do crab cakes. I do.
All right.
I do think he would do crab cakes.
I've actually never addressed this topic with him, so this is actually good fodder for me. We talked 2 weeks ago before he did the first. He did back-to-back. It was really nice for us here in Baltimore. We got back-to-back weeks of your dad. But I need to deal with this to figure out what the actual answers are, and I might have to take him out and see if maybe we can get him to expand that in any way.
Attack it head on. That's always my advice. Attack it head on. Don't beat around the bush with him. My sister, I'll tell you this story. You can even bring it up to him. My sister she loves fruit. She's a huge fan of fruit of all kind. And when she was young, real young, she wanted my dad to try a strawberry for the first time in his life. So she made a deal with him. She made a deal with him that when he turned 40, he had to try a strawberry. And so he agrees to it because it's a little child. He's like, no way she's going to remember 3 years from now that I'm going to have to try a strawberry. So he handshake, whatever. On his 40th birthday, I mean, you're turning 40. I don't think you're thrilled. And he's walking down the stairs. He takes one final step to get to the kitchen level. And my sister's waiting at the bottom of the stairs with a strawberry on a plate saying, happy birthday, here's your strawberry. Oh. She did not forget. Not only did she not forget, it was instantaneous upon exiting the staircase. And he won't admit it, but he enjoyed it.
Of course he did, because strawberries are delicious. No, this is very difficult for me right now, because there's a lot of things I want to say, but I just have such reverence for the man that I can't do it. I can't say all the things that I want to say. I can't eat a strawberry. What is going on here? My 8-year-old won't eat strawberries. This is ridiculous. Noah Eagle, this is a lot of fun, man. Noah Eagle 15 on Twitter is how people can follow you. Of course, tomorrow, 3:30 on NBC for Maryland, Illinois. And looking forward to hoops season. I saw this week. You're going to be part of that as well, and we're excited about that around these parts because we're thinking there could be big things ahead for Maryland there. Always appreciate it. Thank you, man. Appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.